Ladies and gentlemen, the chairman.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you very much. Please remain standing. I ask Father Graham to lead us in prayer.
Thank you, Chairman. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, you have called us to be your people. You have loved us and chosen us for your own. Clothe us with your compassion, your kindness, your humility, your gentleness and patience. Help us to forgive one another as you have forgiven us, and bind us together in the perfect unity of your love, through Jesus Christ the Lord, who is alive and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, God forever and ever.
Amen.
O God, whose Son Jesus Christ cared for the welfare of everyone and went about doing good, through your grace, grant us the imagination and perseverance to create in this county a just society. Make us agents of your compassion to the suffering and deprived, the persecuted and oppressed. Give us the grace to listen carefully to one another, that your wisdom may underpin all that we say, all that we do, and all that we are, so that we may follow Jesus Christ, who is our pattern and our Redeemer. Amen. I invite you to join in the Lord's Prayer with me. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Please be seated. Good morning again. We'll crack on with the meeting, shall we? Item 1, apologies. Are there any apologies for absence?
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, Councillor. Yes, we have a few. Councillor Burnett-Faulkner, Councillor Francis, Councillor Greatorex, Councillor Haddon, Councillor Perry, Councillor Wilcox, Councillor Wildman, and Councillor Trowbridge.
Are there any further apologies? Item 2, declarations of interest. Does any member wish to declare any interest? I have no indication, so we move on to item 3, which is confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting. I move that the minutes of the council meeting held on the 12th of December 2024 be signed as a true record. Is that agreed? Thank you. Thank you. Are you okay? Item 4 is the chairman's correspondence. I have 2 items of correspondence. One of them's quite lengthy. And the first one is His Majesty the King's New Year's honours. A number of Staffordshire residents have received honours in His Majesty the King's this year's honours list. Among those recognised are Mr Ian Dudson, Her Majesty's Lord Lieutenant of Staffordshire for nearly 13 years, who is already a Commander of the Order of the British Empire and has now been made a Knight of the Commander of the Royal Victorian Order for services to the Crown. A number of us have worked with Ian. Certainly I've worked with Ian for 4 years, so this is so well deserved, and as well as offering congratulations from the Chamber, I want to offer my personal congratulations. Officers of the Order of the British Empire, which is an OBE. Sandra Gwendoline Watson of Stafford, lately Children and Families Manager, HMP Oakwood, and of G4S Care and Justice Services, for services to the criminal justice service system. Margaret Yates of Stoke-on-Trent, Chief Executive Officer of All Saints Catholic Collegiate, Stoke-on-Trent, for services to education. Moving on to members of the Order of the British Empire, which is an MBE. Emily Grace Cunningham of Stafford, a marine biologist for services to marine conservation and coastal communities. Professor Elaine Margaret Hay of Stoke-on-Trent, Professor of Stoke-on-Trent, Professor of Community Rheumatology at Keele University for services to medical research. Medalist of the Order of the British Empire, which is the BEMs. Gifford Andrew Foote of Rugeley, who for almost 30 years has been a community support for volunteer and set up meeting points in 1999 to combat isolation in older people, for services to the community in Armitage and Annesacre. And Veronica Harvey of Stoke-on-Trent, lately a nursery teacher and chair of governors at Bentley Nursery for services to early years learning. Simon Hawkins of Burntwood, foster carer for Fostering Solutions West Midlands for services to foster care. Michelle Hawkins of Burntwood, foster carer for Fostering Solutions West Midlands, once again for services to foster care. Robert Allen Love of Tamworth, bowler and ambassador for International Disabled Bowlers, for services to sport and people with disabilities. Robert Patchett of Meaze Valley, who for 20 years has supported communities in the Meaze Valley, working with churches, primary schools, village halls, and the Millennium Green, for services to the community in Mills Valley. Philip John Siddell of Burton-on-Trent, co-owner of Humpty Dumpty Day Nurseries Limited and trustee of the National Day Nurseries Association, West Midlands, for services to the early years and childcare sectors. I'm sure that all members will wish to join me in extending this council's congratulations to all those who have received honours in Staffordshire. That's quite a list for Staffordshire residents. Very impressive. The second item, the retirement of John Tradewell, the Deputy Chief Executive and Director of Corporate Services. Members will be aware that John Tradewell is to retire next month after 17 years with the County Council, and this will be his last full council meeting. I would therefore like to invite the Leader of the Council to say a few words to John about his retirement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When somebody comes to the end of their career, it's always important to recognise the contribution that they've made and I suppose recognise their career over a long period of time. John would describe himself as a local government lifer. Describing himself as a lifer also infers that you've been stuck in prison for a long time as well, doesn't it? But I'm sure he certainly hasn't regarded it in that way. He's been working in local government since 1984 when he started his career as a clerk and legal assistant at Tewkesbury Borough Council. He qualified as a lawyer in 1987 and moved to Rossendale Borough Council, where he worked for a couple of years as an assistant solicitor before being promoted to borough solicitor in 1989. In 2001, John moved to Walton Borough Council as the council solicitor until 2007, and he was also the council's monitoring officer and part of the leadership team there in Walton. He was responsible for managing the legal team and member services. The chief executive from his time in Walton Borough Council, when he worked there, was to describe him as one of the best local government lawyers he has known, and commented on John's high morals, great leadership, and commitment to doing a great job. John joined Staffordshire County Council in 2007, and John, I think you've had so many changes of title since you've been here. It would take about 15 minutes just to go through the changes in title. But the highlights of some of your time working as a director here at Staffordshire County Council was the time when you took on the role of interim chief executive at what was a difficult time for the authority. I think we'll probably both agree on that. And taking it through to a new chief executive arriving in May 2015. You also went to Newcastle-under-Lyme Borough Council to provide support from January 2018 to January 2019, a year, as acting chief executive there, as well as doing your job here, which I thought was a phenomenal effort. I'm sure Councillor Tagg may well want to speak to that in a moment. In 2023, John took the role of Deputy Chief Executive for Staffordshire County Council. He's maintained his practising certificate, his legal certificate, throughout his career and is proud to call himself a lawyer. He is highly regarded and respected by his colleagues, and he is fiercely passionate about Staffordshire County Council, its employees, and the work that he does for the residents of Staffordshire. His local government expertise is second to none. Whilst John won't be forgiven for leaving us at such an exciting time, that's exciting in inverted commas, ladies and gentlemen, with local government reorganisation on the cards, I know that he's looking forward to spending some time with his wife, Alison. He shared some plans to go interrailing and looks forward to having adventures and creating new memories with Alison, and drinking a quality red wine from time to time might feature somewhere in the future. Some of the features that I've enjoyed with working with John is his ability to summarise a complicated discussion, which may have taken an hour or two going back and forth, in a single Yorkshire sentence. He will often say little, but when he does speak, people will listen to what he's got to say. Like me, he never takes a smart jumper or jacket off, and is always, no matter how warm it gets, is always looking the part to do the job. He has a wicked sense of humour and will deliver a one-liner with a deadpan delivery. His inscrutableness is one of his key features. I don't know how he does it, but if something's going awry, you are confronted with what's described as the John look. It's the stare. However, he is unfailingly kind and fair-minded. I have to say, during my time as leader of the council, I've lent on John very, very heavily indeed. I seek his wise counsel out frequently, because I know that what I will get will stand up to the test of scrutiny and fairness. We get quite a lot of stuff comes our way as a council, and ultimately John, as the monitoring officer, is the adjudicator for the complaints and travails that we have coming our way. And I can't think of a single occasion where his adjudication has ever been proven to be incorrect or misguided. And one of the biggest things I respect from John is sometimes when I get an idea in my head, John has the courage to stand up in front of me and say, "Are you sure you want to do this, Alan?" To which I go, "Does it not sound like a good plan to you, John?" And what he will do is offer me some more sensible alternatives to the plan that is afoot. John, personally, I will miss you tremendously. I've really valued your wise counsel, as I've said. Retirement, I do these speeches with, I suppose, quite regularly, I guess. It is a new phase of life. There's a lot of life to go for, and I do hope that you enjoy the opportunity that retirement affords to you, and you live your best life in your retirement. But thank you, on behalf of the people of Staffordshire, thank you for everything you've done for us.
I wouldn't normally take speakers in the chairman's correspondence, but I'm going to decided I'll break protocol, and I have 5 speakers, and I'm going to take them all. Councillor Charlotte Atkins.
To do just that. Serving since 1984. People get less for murder. I mean, I wonder what John did in his last life to mean that he ended up encased within local government for all that time. I can't imagine of the county council without John. He's always been that safe pair of hands. He's always the person that you go to if you really have no idea what to do. And in responding to Alan's stupid ideas, I think normally under Yes Minister it would be, "That's very brave," rather than, "Are you thinking again?" Because I think that when you've been in local government for so long, you do get this sort of second sense about, what will run and what won't run. But I have to say that I do think that a wicked sense of humour is actually a vital ingredient for any officer in local government. And I think really, actually, when we're interviewing, and I've interviewed quite a few officers in my day, that really we ought to have a question about sense of humour, because without a sense of humour, I think it's almost impossible to survive local government. Now, it's probably no surprise that John is retiring at a time when the demise of the county council is on the horizon. Maybe it was that John really couldn't bear the idea of being part of the dismantling of the county council. That is what I suspect. But I think also the idea of spending more time with his family, more time drinking some really good wine. What a shame you couldn't have shared that with my late husband, who was quite a connoisseur of fine wine. And we, in fact, spent many a happy holiday visiting vineyards around France. He didn't speak any French, but he did speak wine labels. I had to supply the French. Anyway, happy retirement, good travels, and good drinking. Thank you very much for your service.
Councillor Simon Tagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, as other speakers have said, for allowing some time to pay tribute to John. As our leader said, John spent, during 2018, a crucial time for the Borough Council as our interim chief exec. We'd had a problem with elections. John will know all about that, but he guided us through our first all-out elections in 2018. Also dealt with some HR issues we had, and also provided the stability and the advice to me as the leader as well, and the wise counsel, which has already been talked about, was priceless, really. So thank you, John, for that. And yesterday I presented John with a certificate of appreciation from Newcastle Borough Council, signed by myself and the Chief Executive, and that, I think, is on behalf of the whole council in Newcastle for the work that you did. As a county council, I was elected in 2007, so came on the authority at the same time as you, John, and I would say again, your advice, your counsel, and the way you've carried yourself as an officer in the many, many positions you've had has been exemplary. So, as has been said, you go on to the next phase of your life now, and I wish you all the best for that and enjoyment for you and your family.
Councillor Syed Hussain.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just would like to extend my tribute to John for his valuable advice whenever I needed it most, especially when we are suffering from all these online media and personal attack to not only to me, to my families as well. John's legal advice was quite invaluable. I also always found with working with John that he is not just the officer of the council, he's the officer of the court, being a solicitor. And his sense and respect to the rule of law, and it really amazed me, and always try to help us, and also sometimes give us a very good career advice as well. Thanks, Johns. Enjoy the holiday. Enjoy the retirement, because every day will be a holiday. Thank you for your service.
Councillor Mark DeVille.
I met John many years ago. And I think it was up in Leek, and I think we were looking at an alternative venue for Leek Show and discussing that, John. Over recent years, we've got to know each other much better. As the leader said, John, I've always regarded you as a man worth listening to. And that's not the case that everyone's not worth listening to. But, John, all of your comments and all of the things that you say are common sense. The good, strong experience and common sense. And you've been a great support to me personally, both as my work as a cabinet member and my work as a local member. You've given great advice and you've given great support. And I really like to think that we become good friends and will continue to be good friends. So I wish you all the very, very best in the next phase of your life, John. You'll enjoy spending more time watching cricket and watching football, watching your beloved Yorkshire and watching England. You'll enjoy that, watching the Owls, and more importantly, spending some real quality time with your family. John, you will leave a real legacy within this council, a good, strong legacy within this council, and you'll leave us as a good friend to me and a good friend to all members, I'm sure, and I wish you all the very best for the future.
Councillor Philip Atkins.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for allowing us the chance to give John the words that he deserves, actually. The first time I met John was at his interview. That was fun. And he was clearly ahead of what we required here at Staffordshire. And we've lived through what we're facing before. And, John, in the 11 years that I was leader, his wise advice, as Alan has said, was always there. His sense of humour. I always got worried when he walked in the room and went, because I knew there was something not very good going to come out, but we'd come round to a solution, which everybody would agree with. I think a couple of things, and Mark's just reminded me of his owl support. I can forgive him for supporting Sheffield Wednesday. He'll be able to watch it a bit more. And the cricket in Yorkshire, great county. They're always a bit short of money, though, I think, Yorkshire people are. So, that was another bit. But I remembered when I forced him to go to Russia to visit Ivanovo, and most of the members went, oh, blimey, you send him on a long train journey. But he enjoyed it because of his Finnish background. So he got the opportunity to see a little bit what it was like where his father came from. I'm going to wish you and Alison loads of time together. I don't know about vineyards. I've joined Camera, actually, and I've found there's various tastes of beer. It's not just beer. And you've got the chance of going and visiting all the breweries, and there are loads of breweries in Staffordshire, and sampling their wares and enjoying that. And I'm sure you'll enjoy the garden as well, and try and hack some of that undergrowth back again. But you'll have a lot of friends, John, in Staffordshire, in the county council and in the boroughs and districts who will no doubt be knocking at your door and offering you work to do for them in your retirement, but of course it will all be unpaid. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Ian Parry.
Thank you, Chair. My relationship and knowledge of John doesn't go back quite as far as Philip, but it does go back to when we were in opposition, which seems like a long time ago now. And our first, as an opposition cabinet, away day at some place in South Stafford, I can't remember, but I think it was an education centre or something. And always struck by John's ability, as everyone's already said, to actually provide clarity to complexity when we're debating and discussing things. And clearly, John is that kind of person and has always been that kind of person. He will leave a huge gap in this organisation. And Mike Bradbury, you're going nowhere because this is the perfect storm, I tell you. So John's ability to be able to do all of those things for us and to advise and guide, not just on a professional level for the council, but as Syed has already said, and I've felt this and experienced this as well, on a personal level as well, when you've got issues that you want some guidance and advice on because you're not quite sure which way to play it. Been very, very, very helpful and kind and generous. And John is also not just the legal mind, also the policy and strategy mind behind a lot of what goes on here, and fixer extraordinaire. It's all right talking about it, but when it needs to get done, someone needs to get it done. And John is a tremendous operator, fixer, and implementer within the council, which is why on those levels we will dearly miss him. Also on a personal level, and my colleague Mark DeVille may well remember this, that Stoke City were playing Sheffield Wednesday at the Britannia. Be careful, you've ruined the punchline. We thought it would be fun to drag John off to see how associations football should be played at its finest. And so we dragged him off to the Britannia Stadium one cold Tuesday evening. It's a well-known fact, isn't it? Cold Tuesday evenings at the Britannia are not the most hospitable places. But anyway, it was a memorable evening, and it was only memorable, really, by the fact we won for once. I don't think we've done it twice. I don't think we've beaten Sheffield Wednesday since. We had a great time. It was good fun. And it's I guess, a hallmark of good, strong professional relationships where you can remain professional and distanced in a sense, respectful of each other, but still have some fun and still have a few laughs along the way. And John's wicked sense of humour, caustic at times, penetrating at times, will be sadly missed. And John, thank you for everything you've done for us, and personally, thanks for the advice you've given to me.
And one final speaker, Councillor Philip White.
Thank you very much, Chair. And, John, the ordeal's nearly over. I know you're not necessarily a fan of being over-complimented, but let me just try and add one or two more before we finish on this item. So I'm even newer in terms of knowing you. I've known you for just shy of 8 years now, and it was a really interesting experience for me getting to know you as a senior lawyer who was advising me as somebody who came into an executive role fairly early in my career as a councillor, and frankly didn't know one bit of my body from another in terms of a lot of the things we have to do as councillors. And but bringing with it the experience of my day job, which is recruiting senior lawyers. So I find partners for law firms and senior counsel for businesses. And it's just been interesting as our relationships develop, thinking about how I do my day job and how you sort of judge lawyers and their suitability for different roles. And a decent lawyer is one who tells you what you can and cannot do and sort of keeps you out of prison and that kind of thing. A good lawyer, one who's probably capable of something more, a leadership role, tends to be somebody who doesn't tell you what you can and cannot do, but they're very good at helping you understand the consequences of your actions. And I work with some good lawyers who are able to do that. The thing that I've always really enjoyed about working with you, John, is that you're good at that. You never patronised me when I was early in my career as a councillor and probably saying some really silly things. You've always been great at helping me understand and come to good decisions. But I think the thing that really marks you out for me is the fact that you've always wanted to go over and above and look at the outcomes that we're trying to achieve as a council for the people that we serve. So it's not just telling us what we can and cannot do, keeping us out of prison. It's helping us to do those things we're trying to do for the people that we serve. And I think that, for me, is the hallmark of what you do. And you've always done it in a really thoughtful and considered way, and in a way that allows us as politicians to do the things that we're trying to do. The final thing that I'll say, just with my sort of recruitment hat on again, is I think you leave our directorate at a time when the future is bright. If I look to my left at our new directors and some of our assistant directors who are here, we've got a wonderful talent pool that you've played a huge part in developing and bringing into the council. So I think as you hang up your boots and you're looking back at the council, as I'm sure you'll do from time to time, and see what we're up to, I think the future is bright, and a lot of that future, however the council is constituted in the future, serving the people that we serve here in Staffordshire, you can look back at that and think, I've played a good part in making sure we're in the right place. So thank you very much for that.
That was lovely, really nice, and I offer my personal thanks because John, in this role and other issues, has been incredibly helpful and knowledgeable to me, genuinely so. While we're in the mood for breaking protocol, let's keep going, shall we? And it's unusual that anybody other than a council speaks in this chamber, but I'm going to ask John if he wants to say a few words. He does.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you to all the speakers, and also thank you to all the members of the council who have said nice things to me over the past few weeks once my retirement became known. Just to correct one thing from the various speeches, I think my love of red wine might have been overstated slightly. Just want to put that on the record. But yeah, this has been the best 17, 18 years of my life working in Staffordshire. It's been a great part of my career. It's been a council that's really made me welcome, and I'm grateful to all the elected members that I've been here with during that time for making me so welcome and being so supportive of me, and has made it such an enjoyable time. And as has been sort of picked up in some of the speeches, I've had some great opportunities here to do some things that so many people don't have the chance to do. So I just want to say thank you to you all. Thank you to the council for giving me that great opportunity to come here back in 2007. It's been the best part of my career. Thank you very much.
And now, members, it's back to protocol. We move on to item 5 on today's agenda, which is the medium-term financial strategy 2025 to 30 and the 2025 to 26 budget and council tax. At the end of the debate, in accordance with statutory regulations, I propose to take a name vote on the recommendations before the council. Members are reminded that under section 106 of the Local Government Finance Act 1992, if they are 2 months or more in arrears with their council tax, it is an offence for them to vote on the budget. Members are also required to disclose at the meeting that the fact that section applies to them. Councillor Parry, will you move consideration of the report, please?
Good morning, Chairman, and good morning, members, again.
Councillor Parry, I had to interrupt you. You've only at this stage got to remove consideration, and I'll come back to you to speak.
I do beg your pardon, Chairman. I've only been doing this about a dozen times.
Okay, that's...
I move, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor White, will you second?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I second the report and reserve my right to come back at the end.
Thank you. Councillor Parry, I will now call you. I'll also inform members and John Tradewell that there's been a request for no time limit on this. It is the budget. It is really important. It is the only request I've received, so I'm more than happy to grant that request. So, Councillor Ian Parry.
Certain trepidation as I rise, Chair, and just tell me to sit down again. Thank you, Chair. Members, it's my job on behalf of the Leader of the Council, Alan White, and myself, Cabinet Member for Finance, to present to you for your approval the medium-term financial strategy and subsequent and associated reports for your approval. I'd like to start with a few thanks, if I may, Chair. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to the Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee Task Group, MTFS Task Group, that have been doing a tremendous job over the last few months at scrutinising the medium-term financial strategy and all of the components that go into creating the medium-term financial strategy and the budget. This is a difficult and technical task, supported by our Deputy Chief Finance Officer, Rachel Spain. But this is an important task. It doesn't happen everywhere. I'm personally really grateful that I can stand here today to say that this medium-term financial strategy and budget has gone through robust scrutiny and oversight, and it's had more heads, if you like, in the process, not just Cabinet and officers, but also members drawn from the Corporate Strategy Task Group to be able to do this work. So really grateful for all of the work that's been done there. Very important. I'd also like to thank our Chief Finance Officer and Section 151 Officer, Pete Shakespeare, and his team for all the work in bringing this budget together. It is a pressured process, in a sense, towards the end when we receive local government settlements, etc., to try and bring all the components together right at the very end. A very difficult and pressured environment, to which I'm really grateful to the finance team under Pete Shakespeare. And also similarly to the corporate team of this council that have given the leadership for this budget and for the implementation of policies. And then, of course, to members, to all members, to opposition members who've been part of that scrutiny task group, to all members, to cabinet members. This starts really, doesn't it, with member decision-making, with member policy-making. And some of that's done by the cabinet in terms of policy shaping and leadership, and passed to officers for implementation and resourcing through our medium-term financial strategy. So this is not just a team effort, this is an organisation effort in Staffordshire, an organisation effort that everybody's involved in. And I'm really pleased and proud of the fact that here in Staffordshire, we have a culture of this being organisational effort. We have a culture that people really understand strong financial management, strong financial controls, the willingness and ability of members to take difficult decisions where necessary in order to maintain and sustain a stable and viable financial basis for this council to operate. That requires, as I say, organisational commitment, and it requires an organisational culture that everybody understands that, everybody gets that. Every organisation and every part of this organisation understands the need for good, strong financial control. And that's why our budget this year will come in slightly underspent. Good, strong financial management. It means that our medium-term financial strategy over the next 3, potentially 4 years is balanced. That it doesn't come easy, and I've said this before, it's because of those historic difficult decisions that we've taken in the past. But the job is not done. The mission is not complete. It never is. Next week we'll bring a fresh set of pressures and challenges for this council to operate. And with all of that, we must remember that this council is a people organisation. 65% of what this council approves to spend will be spent on looking after and supporting adults and children. 65% of everything we spend. And very often it's those areas that remain the pressures for this council in children and adults. At the moment, just to, in a sense, stand still, we'll be spending an extra £130 million over a 3-year period, just to cover increases in demand, demographic pressure, inflation, other risks, other pressures, not necessarily spending on service improvement, which we're doing as well, but just to stand still. Just because of those external pressures on our organisation and population change. Everybody's getting older, apparently. All of those things bring immense pressure on this council. And this year alone, the council, the national insurance employer contribution has increased from 13.5 to 15%, as you know. A significant pressure, significant cost pressure on this council. Not just on our obligations as an employer to our employees, some of which is met by government grant, and we appreciate that, but the supply chain costs in all of those organisations, if you like, that we have to work with to support children and adults in the care system, which are generally businesses that have large staffing ratios, will inevitably be bringing costs to this doorstep for this council and our taxpayers to pick up. It means that paying that dilutes what we can spend elsewhere. Thank you very much, Chancellor of the Exchequer, for putting this cost burden on this council that should not be the pressure upon the stealth tax on the British public. We are dealing largely with financial pressures that every council, in a sense, faces. I think we can manage really well in those running a council costs. I think we demonstrate we run that really well. The pressures which we face and the risks we face are system failure pressures, which are clearly the responsibility of government. System failure pressures in adults, which has been crying out for reform for decades, and significantly in children's, which is also crying out for reform. On top of that, we've been waiting, haven't we, how long, for reform of local government finance, promised endlessly that it's just over the corner, just around the corner, just over the hill. And in fact, my concern is that the present government think that local government reform and devolution will take that problem off the table. So somehow that will get mysteriously removed, and that local government funding and financing will get fixed. There is an absolute reality that it won't get fixed, that actually the reform of local government finance remains an imperative for local government and for this country. So I would implore opposition colleagues and this council to continue that pressure on the need for fairer funding, because if that persists after local government reorganisation or into the devolved councils, then it will potentially get a lot worse. Then if we come to the number one risk, pressure that we seem to have emerged, this is clear and present danger for us. It's called the SEND, or the Direct Schools Grant. We know, I'm not sure if the government understand it, that this means that we have a legal duty, and one which we will not step back from. We insist in looking after children. We insist in delivering to children who need an education, health and care plan and need the extra support that they require, and are given the extra support that they require. We're committed to doing that. But the cost is a overspend, a liability of north of £15 million this year, which is not a liability for council taxpayers. It's a liability for government that is sitting on our balance sheet. And at some point, that could become our liability. That is only going to grow more without system reform. That's only going to grow more. And that presents the risk to this council that the cash that's needed to actually provide the support for children and those care plans will drive our cash almost to the bottom. We've got to have system reform. We've got to have some acknowledgement that the Direct Schools Grant liability on this council is removed and managed by government. They will claim £1 billion has been pumped into this. £1 billion. Spread across the liability that's already exists across local government, that will not touch the sides, frankly. It's no point in actually just topping up and realising that without reform, we will not be able to work our way out of that liability. But there is good news, Chairman, as well. There is opportunity. This is an investing council. This is not a cut and close council, and never has been under this administration. This is an innovative council. We are investing this year and over future years in improvements that will generate things to do, places to go, lifestyle choices, investment in our countryside, in our libraries, in our culture and history, etc. There is a major investment program that we are developing and implementing right now. We also recognise, and I hope everyone else recognises, that climate change is having a major impact on our finances and our budget here in Staffordshire. It's something which is going to be difficult to keep up with in terms of the impact and the implementation and the impact of climate change. We have seen over the last few years, haven't we, that the number of storms, the heavy persistent rain, the rise in the water table on land, the difficulties in managing flooding. When I joined the County Council, and up to, 5 years ago, the main problem in the winter was probably snow and ice. And our conversations were around, have we got enough grit to last till the end of the season? Will we be able to get out and keep our roads clear? Now, we don't talk very much about snow and grit and things like that. We talk about flooding. And that's because that change in our climate means we now need to reprofile how we attack that change. How we make sure that the impact of climate change does not destroy our work on road maintenance. So we've got a plan. We did last year increase our spend on recovery from winter damage by 5 million plus additionality of bringing forward some of our capital programme to do some of that work. We've decided to continue that level of funding across the period of the MTFS, an extra 5 million a year. That will increase the amount of work that we can do in terms of gully emptying and defect fixing, etc. But we want to do more. So today we can announce that we will actually reduce, or actually release, shall I say, an extra £20 million from our reserves. Now, these aren't reserves that we can't afford to use. This is from our council tax smoothing reserve. Obviously, we calculate the council tax income generation each year, and we make contingency where that may fall below expectation, etc. We believe that actually that contingency is significantly higher than we probably need to hold, and therefore this is an opportunity to reinvest that money that we put aside, which is council taxpayers' money, to invest in a climate response fund, and to spend, which we've now allocated, and I will be asking for your approval this morning, an extra £12 million on top of the 5 million that we've already allocated over the MTFS. That means next year we'll be spending an extra 19, nearly £20 million on additionality, purely additionality. This may mean additional pothole pros, teams to tackle flooding, more gully emptying, more dig downs, all of those sort of things that will hopefully arrest that issue of climate change and put us in a better position. It's not the end of it. This is going to be a struggle that we're going to have to face over the next few years. But it's a start, and I think it's a significant amount that we are investing now in roads to be able to, in our highways, to be able to achieve that. That's been done through, I think, smart use of our reserves and our contingencies. And it's something I think residents and taxpayers and road users will welcome. If I may then, Chair, I'd like to move on to the budget recommendations itself. Did you want me?
Certainly, Councillor Alan White.
Point of information, Mr. Chairman. The release of reserves is 15 million, not 20.
Beg your pardon, Chairman. Carrying too many numbers in my head this morning. 15 million is the ask, which is in the recommendation, and I'm grateful to the leader for pointing that out to me. Grateful. And 12 million is allocated to highways, as described. In the recommendations, we'll require, I won't read out all of the recommendations, I'll accept them as printed, but I will draw your attention to a couple of points within the recommendations, if I may. We'll require a net budget of 735 million. After adjustments, the budget requirement is therefore 738 million, and the council tax requirement of 487 million. That will be raised through an increase of 4.99% when compared to 2024-25, and will make a Bandy property 6 £1,621.71. I'm pleased to tell the Council that we still, in Staffordshire, remain the third lowest council tax of Shire counties, the third lowest. We've always been there or thereabouts. We have, on a couple of occasions, been the lowest or second lowest. Still pleased that we're still down there and doing our best to provide good service, good standards of service at the lowest possible cost. We do that through efficiency, and we do that through the energy that we put into transformation and innovation. So, apart from the as-printed Chair, which the recommendations go from page 23 through to page 25, I'd also like to draw attention to the fact that we are asking on page 25, there's an additional recommendation to Council on page 25, that the Director of Finance be authorised to adjust the contingency provision to reflect any grant and local taxation changes announced in the final local government settlement. And the final recommendation, which I will find in a moment, is that on page 24, that we release, on page 24, item 10, we release up to 15 million from earmarked reserves for a Phase 4 investment programme with details shown in Appendix 15. Chair, it's my duty, my privilege to present this MTFS and medium-term financial strategy to this Council, and I commend it to the Council. Thank you.
Councillor Samantha Thompson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Parry. Every year we hold a working group to scrutinise the Council's medium-term financial strategy, the MTFS annual budget and council tax setup. This year we took a close look at the Council's financial status, the draft MTFS, a planned spending and investments, key assumptions and risks for a balanced budget. We are happy to report that the draft MTFS presents a balanced budget for the first 3 years of the 5-year plan. Cabinet members and officers join our meetings, provide us with valuable insights and answering all our questions. After reviewing all the evidence, we feel confident that the Council is actively managing risks and keeping a close eye on budget assumptions and funding pressures. This means adjustments to the MTFS can happen as needed. Overall, we believe the process for developing the MTFS for 25-26, along with the 25-2030, along with the 25-26 annual budget and council tax, has been thorough and solid. It aligns with the principles of a well-balanced budget. However, it is essential to keep the momentum on transformation programmes to find new savings and efficiencies. This is crucial for maintaining a balanced budget in the final 2 years of the MTFS. Our recommendations highlighted the importance of advancing transformation programmes, the need for ongoing efficiency and savings efforts, raising awareness among residents about the current service delivery within the budget constraints, and the need for long-term government funding and legalisation to allow changes to help the Council to operate more efficiently. The MTFS recommendations were presented to Cabinet on the 24th-25th of January. Their response can be found in the agenda pack, Apex 14. These will be discussed further at the corporate overview and scrutiny meeting on February the 24th, allowing us to hold the Cabinet member accountable should we feel there's a need. May I just say thank you to the working group that worked alongside with this and all the officers that put the input and the time. It's very much appreciated. Thank you.
Councillor Nigel Yates.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was just thinking, Last year, I stood up and put an amendment forward. I'm going to put an amendment forward now. And I was accused of doing it too late in the day and not having a chance to consider it. Obviously, that hasn't happened this year. I've followed procedure and protocol. I've issued the amendment in plenty of time. And it's very gratifying to see that at the 11th hour, unannounced, without presenting an amendment to the budget, Councillor Parry has obviously taken on board the substance of what I'm going to say. So thank you very much for that. However, the amendment I would like to put forward still has validity and still stands. So let me read out the amendment, if I may, Chair, and I'll read out the rationale, which, to me, still puts forward the fact that it stands. The effects of climate change are becoming ever more conspicuous, precipitation is increasing, extreme weather events are becoming the norm. This amendment proposes to provide a contingency fund to help mitigate the effects on our county, to establish a reserve of a flood defence adaptation and infrastructure reserve. The reserve would be called upon to make structural improvements to flood defences in high-risk or perceived high-risk areas, for example, enhanced drain construction, not just clearance. Linked to pressures around climate change, the proposal is to earmark the sum of £2 million from capital reserves to fund improvements. This would be a one-off in nature as it is funded from reserves. And item 1B is the primary function of government, be it local or national, is to protect our citizens. The recent changes to the flood defence policy does not support either this fundamental aim or take account of the increased frequency of flood events due to climate change. It is proposed that the current policy for the flood defence interventions is maintained at the current criteria. Instead of 5 homes needed to be affected by flooding before action is taken, retain this at the current 2 homes. It is proposed that any additional expenditure would be met within this £2 million reserve. What is precipitated by this amendment is correspondence from the local flood team, which I've received, which goes, given the high number of flooding reports that Staffordshire County Council Flood Risk Team are currently receiving, we are now having to prioritise our response to reports of flooding based on the associated risks to property and infrastructure. As such, it may not be possible for us to carry out an investigation into every reported flooding incident. In conjunction with our local flood risk management strategy, we are prioritising reports where one or more of the following thresholds are exceeded. 5 or more residential properties are reported to have been internally flooded during a single flood event or in one location. 2 or more business properties are reported to have been internally flooded during a single event in one location. Or one or more items of critical infrastructure are reported to have been adversely affected during a single flood event or in one location. Or 1 or more residential properties in the same location are reported to have been internally flooded more than once during the 5-year period. And it goes on to say, well, we may investigate flooding outside these categories, but only when all other outstanding issues with a higher priority are being considered. At a time of great climate uncertainty, we should not be diminishing our capacity to protect and help the residents of Staffordshire that we serve. And it's very interesting that those notes were picked up in principle by Councillor Perry. So I will move this amendment for consideration, but I will offer an olive branch to the leader that if he agrees that the Staffordshire County Council flood team can revert to the prior property of interventions after 2 properties, not 5, then I will withdraw this amendment. Otherwise, I move this amendment and reserve the right to respond.
As Councillor Yates has put an amendment forward to the budget, do I have a seconder for that amendment?
Yes, I second it.
Thank you, Councillor Atkins. I'm now moving on to only talk about the amendment. So if you've requested to speak, please be aware we are only now talking about the amendment. That it is really important. There will be maybe a minute's delay while the amendment is distributed by the council officers. I'll quite rightly give members just a minute to read through so they're fully conversant with Councillor Yates' amendment. I genuinely think a suitable time as we've arrived that we can move on. I will remind members again that we are only discussing the amendment. Councillor Graham-Hutton.
Can I take this question back and I'll ask a question after this amendment's been through? Thank you.
Yes, I presume you want to talk on the substantive...
I would like to talk on the substantive budget.
Yeah, that's fine. We'll just come back to us then. Councillor Simon-Tagg.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think when this amendment was put down, I was expecting something more. I thought there was going to be some explanation of the hammering of this council's finances by the national insurance increases. I don't see anything that coming from the Labour Chancellor of the Exchequer, or talk about the £30 million cut into highways funding that we would have got if the previous government's plans had been fulfilled. All we have is an amendment which I think is the back of the fag paper stuff and doesn't hold up to scrutiny. Particularly on the bit on 1B relating to the flood property threshold, it has always been 5. There's been no reduction in that in the flood risk management strategy that was taken through scrutiny in Cabinet recently. And it relates to the S19 investigations, and that is funded through a revenue, obviously, cost rather than a capital cost, which I believe the amendment relates to £2 million capital, so couldn't actually be funded from the money. So it's an unfunded commitment that they're putting forward there. I think that should be noted as well. As for our strategy for flood risk management and flood alleviation, this council over the last year has spent over £2 million in that area, and that will rise to £5.5 million by 28-29. And that involves flood alleviation plans, dealing with residents' issues and delivering flood alleviation plans, and also our FAIR project and the rollout of that, which is flooding, awareness, and also information and all the other things attached with making people aware of flooding issues so we can actually arm people with information, where to go to for information about flooding and how to act quickly to enable their properties to be safe. It's a one-stop shop approach for flooding. We're working in partnership with other authorities in the West Midlands to deliver that, and that will be a real difference for local residents who suffer flooding. And we're concentrating on those areas that suffer from flooding issues, and they're across the county. Many local members will know them in their wards. There are certainly some on the edge of my ward in my division up in Newcastle, in Silverdale, that are going to be beneficiaries from some of that flood alleviation investment that we're doing over the last few years. So disappointed in this amendment. I think I'm really pleased with the previous announcement by the portfolio holder, Mr. Parry, of the 15 million investment in, and some of that to be used for that climate response fund. We'll also be bringing to March Cabinet a climate change adaptation strategy, which will also cover flooding alleviation. So I think I'm not going to support this amendment, and I don't think other members should do, because I think it doesn't actually stand up. It's back of a fag paper stuff, and I think the plans that we have for the flood risk management strategy, which went through scrutiny, I would say, Mr. Chairman, and I don't remember any of this being raised at scrutiny. I was there and represented the Cabinet on there, and no members raised these issues at that, as far as I can remember. So I'm not in favour of this amendment, and I would like to probably speak later on the substantive motion of the budget.
Councillor Robert Pritchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's an interesting amendment, but I want to put into perspective some of the flood projects that have already happened across Staffordshire to kind of reflect the scale of the cost of these sort of schemes. So in Fazeley, there was a scheme delivered to protect around 50 houses, which cost £3.5 million. In Rugeley, there was a scheme to protect a few hundred houses that cost £5.3 million. And there was another scheme in Tamworth not too many years ago that cost 2.5, and in essence that was to protect a single pub and a road. These were all long-term schemes that took a number of years to plan and then deliver. So I'm not sure how a one-off, one-year scheme will actually make any difference on the ground. And if this funding was actually to be divided amongst all the councillors, well, then you've got about £30,000. Again, that's not going to make a material difference to the issue of flooding or property protection in Staffordshire. I think the only outcome from this motion will be £2 million left in balances at the end of the next financial year. And for that reason, I think it's a very silly amendment.
Councillor Philip Atkins.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. I was just amazed we've got an alternate budget. I can't remember one. Well, I was a leader and I couldn't remember one. Blimey, well done. Mind you, that's probably because our budgets are fairly good and fair in the word. Mr Yates really ought to know about Section 19 reports because there's a whole page of them if you follow the flood risk management, flood studies and investigations where houses, up to 5 houses have been flooded, and the details of what you can do to mitigate the flooding. It's a little bit more than just putting up barriers and advising householders who sadly homes get flooded. It really is a motive subject. I've got a parish, Marchington, where 11 properties were flooded recently. They have floodgates. The Environment Agency, Severn Trent are involved, the Staffordshire County Council involved. These major works have gone into that. And sadly, they get told by the Environment Agency there's not enough homes to be bothered about you. You know, there's pumps that pump the water out when the River Dove goes down. Over £30 million has been spent in Burton to stop flooding of 20,000 houses. £30 million. And then if you read the paperwork, and I think Ian really ought to apologise for the amount of paper there is. Page 149, it's got the £2.4 million that's been put in to help alleviate the flooding and help do that. And I'm involved with our flood risk manager trying to get the farmers on board because there's a little bit more to it than just putting barriers up to help hold the water back so that they can do their bit through catchment-sensitive farming or sustainable farm initiatives to harvest rainwaters, to stop it going into the drains and ditches, which eventually feed the streams and the rivers and the brooks that flood houses. But of course, your government has brought in the agricultural inheritance tax, which has now stopped them investing money in the very machinery that you would like them to get used to do the work that you want doing. No mention of that in this chamber. None. 200 or 300 tractors down in Whitehall this week, and there'll be more on the 28th, unless your government thinks about what they're doing to the people of Staffordshire. I'm not voting for this.
Councillor Mark
Happy to directly address Mr Yates's amendment. I think, firstly, Chairman, Mr Yates will be very pleased, I'm sure, to listen to Mr Parry and fully understand that the budget, importantly, focuses on our vision for Staffordshire and focuses on lifestyle benefits for the people of Staffordshire. And I agree with your comments around the impact of flooding and the impact that flooding has on our MTFS. I agree. That's where the agreement ends, though, Chairman, I'm afraid. Mr Yates is proposing a short-term, one-off flood defence reserve. Well, firstly, this is a medium-term financial strategy. Shouldn't be driven by short-term proposals. Secondly, and more importantly, Mr Yates, I think you'll be delighted to hear that we've gone well and over and above your proposal anyway, with the amount of money that we're allocating to our flood defences. And we at the County Council take flood defence massively seriously. I know only too well the misery that floods cause. I know firsthand of the massive detrimental effect it has on people's lives and businesses, how it affects businesses. My local area was probably affected recently, before and just after Christmas, worse than any other area. So absolutely get the importance of our flood defence and the budget that supports our flood defence. And our flood defence work concentrates on work on our highways, but also, importantly, as Mr. Tagg alluded to, our important work on our flood alleviation schemes. So last year, this is not including highways, the amount of money that we spend on highways. Last year, we spent 2.1 million on flood defence schemes. This year, we're spending 4.3 million on these schemes. That doesn't include highways expenditure. So if I can get onto highways, you'd expect me to. If I can paint a clear picture of where we are with our highways flood defence work, Mr. Chairman, just a bit of history. Over recent years, the base level of highway drainage has consisted largely of 6 cyclical gully crews, and they've cleared about 50,000 gullies per year. Other resources were in place to complete 260 drainage defect repairs per month. Now, these facts are important because it shows where we were and how we are now, This coming year, we've got an additional 2 gully crews introduced in July 2024. Importantly, the productivity of these crews has increased by about 4,000 gullies per month. So the number of gullies that we've cleansed on highways, and this is over and above the capital schemes on flood alleviation that Councillor Tagg spoke of, we've doubled output. So not only have we put more money in, we've used our money better and increased productivity. The additional cyclical gully cleansing reduced the backlog from 53,000 in May to 42,000 by December. And between August and October, the high-pressure jetter, the JetVac, was deployed for 12 weeks, completing 377 complex drainage tasks that required specialised equipment. So do we take flood alleviation seriously? Too right we do, colleagues. So Labour's solution to this, of course, is to throw more money at it. Well, our solution, colleagues, isn't to do that. Our solution, we'd prefer to invest considerably more money, carefully and strategically. That then means that we approach our operations in a cleverer and more productive manner, and more importantly, Chairman, that we absolutely achieve very best value for our Staffordshire taxpayers. We've always done that, colleagues, and we will continue to do that. It's not my money, it's the money of the Staffordshire taxpayer, and we'll ensure that we spend that money in the very, very best way.
Thank you. Councillor Johnny McMahon.
Thank you, Chair. I will not be supporting this either, but everything I wanted to say has been covered by other colleagues, so I'll stand down. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McMahon. Councillor Paul Northcote.
Mr. Chairman, I wasn't going to respond on this, but I feel I must in light of the comments that have been made this morning. I won't be able to support this amendment, and I'll tell you for why. There's been no mention here about the government's failure to address the areas in the rural area particularly. We've heard of more housing that's being promised, more housing targets, but what we see in the rural area is more and more building without consideration of where it's been built, where the flooding mitigation is. We're not seeing that linked up approach in terms of successfully planning where housing should be. All we're doing is just exacerbating the problems and building on areas which we know to have flooded, known to be on floodplains, known to be of causation in valleys, etc., where the water will collect and undoubtedly put strain onto the highways in terms of the road management system. So to just throw money at this just for 1 year really isn't addressing the problem. And I see no evidence in here to talk about the MPPF that's been changed towards the end of last year and the house building market. There's nothing there about flood mitigation. That's a golden opportunity to build in the right place with the right direction and plan for house building. This clearly is just a guesswork, really, in terms of the estimate, and really doesn't tackle the problem. And I think without sort of thorough thought from this government, in terms of the MPPF, linking with the flood agency and the environmental agencies, this is a complete joke. And you've heard from members this morning that we've addressed that and gone far beyond that in terms of the report that's been presented for members this morning. So I, for one, will not be able to support this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Philip White.
Thank you very much, Chair. I won't be able to support this amendment either for the reasons that others have mentioned. But I think it is fair to say, Councillor Yates, you've identified the same thing that we've identified. I think all of us in this chamber would agree that flooding is one of the issues that we need to be able to tackle. Not that it's particularly important, but we've been working on these proposals for a little while. We were just waiting for the local government settlement to be able to bring them forwards. But that doesn't really matter. We're identifying the right things, aren't we? I think the difficulty, though, that I have with your amendment is that I think in looking around this room for the solution to our flooding issues is ignoring the thing that we really need, which is the government to step up and provide the funding that we require. £2.3 million, just to provide an illustration. We had a flood scheme in my village, Ralston-on-Dove. The on-Dove bit gives the clue. We get river flooding. The County Council spent over £1 million there to deal with highways-related issues that were contributing to flooding. The village still floods because the Environment Agency can't afford to deliver a scheme in the village to deal with what they need to deal with. And I think the difficulty with signalling, yes, we need to spend money on flood defence, is £2.3 million. I say it again, over £1 million for one scheme in my village. We have hundreds of places in Staffordshire that need that, thousands, tens of thousands around the country. County councils don't have the budget to do this. Now, on this side of the chamber, when the previous government was in power, we were always open about saying where funding was required for councils, and it remains the same. So highways, flooding, adult social care, special educational needs. We were always clear in saying those things. I know that the leader of the Labour group is due to speak after me. I wonder if we could have some unanimity, now that national government has changed over, in saying very clearly, in certain areas that I've mentioned, and germane to this flooding, we need the government to step up. We need them to provide the funding we require. £2.3 million will not solve these problems for Staffordshire. We need the government to step in and do this. So I'll wait to see what the Leader of the Opposition says. But I can't support this amendment. We're already covering it off. More funding for flooding to deal with the real issues there are from the proper source, I absolutely support.
Thank you. This is where I am with these members. I want to be clear where we go from here. Councillor Atkins has reserved the right to speak, so I'll call her first. I'm going to give Councillor Yates the right to reply to the debate, of course, and then Councillor Alan White, and last but not least, I will call Councillor Ian Parry as the right to reply. That's the information I was given, and I've checked that. And that's the amendment we're talking about, yes. Unless the monitoring officer wants to correct me. And that's why I read it, because I want to be absolutely sure we get this right. I was wrong. Give it me again. Thank you, Councillor White. With such discretion. I've had a correction. So I will now quite rightly call Councillor Alan White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am talking to the amendments, to be clear.
You are, yes.
Thank you. You might think there's an election coming, because there's always a temptation to virtue signal from the opposition prior to an election to say, look what we're doing. We intend to stick £2 more million into the flooding issue that affects Staffordshire. But it's really important that you read the budget book before you do something like that, because what you'll find when you read the budget book is that this side of the chamber has already stuck £2.4 million into the flooding challenge, and therefore we're already tackling the problem. But that doesn't stop the headline appearing, does it, which is Labour Group proposes an additional £2 million and Tories vote it down. But of course what they don't do in their amendment is say why they think the amount of money we have put towards it isn't sufficient. No effort there at all. And interestingly, Councillor Yates, who's put forward the amendment, you sit on the MTFS working group. This is the working group that actually looks at how we spend the money in Staffordshire. And it works over a period of months. And during those months, there are plenty of opportunities for members of the MTFS working group to go, you know what, you're only sticking £2.4 million into the flooding thing. You should double it. And the reason why you should double it is 1, 2, 3, X, Y, Z, take your pick. But they didn't do that. They could have also laid the groundwork on the run-up to the presentation of this budget to Cabinet 2 weeks ago. They didn't do that. So it's really, really important for people who propose amendments to the budget to make sure they've read the budget properly before they actually propose those amendments. But I have most problem with Part 1B of the amendment, because what Part 1B does is it commits this authority to revenue spending. Now, what Labour could say is, well, of course, you've got the capital reserves, why don't you just spend it? Fine. OK, let's say we take that. But let's look carefully at Section 1B. Now, Councillor Atkins referred to Section 19 inspections because he's been around for a while, in case anybody hasn't noticed. And that's where the money comes in, the revenue money. There is no estimation whatsoever in the amendment of how many additional inspections will be, Section 19 inspections will be required as a result of the reduction from 5 properties down to 2. Is it an increase of 100%, 200%, 300%? 5 properties was deemed proportionate and reasonable, and it's deemed proportionate and reasonable not just by us, but countrywide. So that reduction could increase revenue spending in the department for Section 19 inspections by, stick your finger in the air, 4.5 million, 1% of council tax, 5 million, more than 1% of council tax. We have no knowledge of that. So Section 1B is an uncosted, open-ended commitment to spending by this authority. And perhaps that's what you get from Labour, which is it's easy to spend the capital that happens to be in the pot, but it's the revenue contributions that are required over a long period of time, and that's what gets local authorities into trouble. That's what causes them to become insolvent. That's what causes them to have to issue 114 notices. We are surrounded by authorities who do that, and here in Staffordshire, we don't do that at all.
Councillor Charlotte Atkins.
Well, I'm delighted that this amendment, our amendment, has sparked such an energised debate about the importance of measures to prevent flooding, because I think it's probably the best debate we've had in terms of climate change and the importance of mitigating the impact of climate change. We all know about the trauma of flooding, whether it be to a home, to a business, to a community, and clearly what we've seen in Staffordshire since 2000 is 13 significant flood events. And even Midlands Today, in fact, did a special programme on flooding, demonstrating how significant that has been. So our amendment is a tiny way forward in terms of trying to mitigate those pressures. Now, in terms of the government, yes, of course, the government has to put more money into flood defences, into climate change, into SEND, into social care. But we have a legacy of 14 years of Tory government that completely underfunded local government and in fact tried to dismantle local government. So if we're talking about local government insolvency, where does that come from? 14 years of underfunding. Now, I recognise that we still have more to do in terms of local government, but this government has only been in power for a few months. We had 14 years of constant underfunding by government of local authorities, and that has left a huge legacy. It's not surprising that councils of both persuasions, both Tory and Labour, have had difficulties managing and balancing their budgets. But don't put that down to a new Labour government. Put that down to 14 years of Tory legacy.
Councillor Yates, you're next. You haven't pressed your button.
Yes. Thank you.
Yates.
Thank you, Chair. Just in response to some of the comments. Councillor DeVille, Labour throwing money at it, you know, without much thought. We seem to have had 7.5 times the amount thrown at you without much thought and presented this morning, which seems to be in a direct response to the heads up that we're interested in mitigating climate change. I make no excuses for being interested in mitigating climate change. I make no excuses for trying to look after our residents. Full stop, no debate there. Nationally, 6th of February, last week, government announces record £2.6 billion investment in flood defences across the country. It'll take time to get in. That's an investment which is going to be put in there over the next 2 years. As Councillor Atkins has said, our Councillor Atkins, not, don't know what he said, it will take time to turn around the oil tanker of destruction of the last 14 years. These things do not happen overnight. And the one thing which I will say is, just referring back to the background to the amendment, is just picking out some phrases. Given the high number of flooding reports, we all know there's an ongoing and increasing problem. We are prioritising. In other words, we're reducing our response to the ones which are the most critical. The ones which aren't the most critical are still extremely critical to the people who are affected by that flooding, whether it be in the Staffordshire Moorlands or whether it be in Tamworth or wherever. And they need the reassurance that somebody has contacted them, somebody is listening to them, and at least somebody is giving them advice. That is the important thing about this amendment. And one thing about splashing money, we're not splashing money, we're saying have it available if it's needed. We might, with climate change, with the vagrancy of climate change, we might have the wettest summer on record coming up. We might also have the driest 12 months coming up and the money stays in the pot. It just makes sure it's there. So if we have to act, at least we've got something to act with. I move this amendment.
Councillor Ian Parry. Sorry, Parry. Just to correct, that was the information I was given by, and I'll take the vote after this.
So, procedurally, I'm speaking to the amendment, Chair. I am.
Yes, I have checked with the monitoring officer before we did this. You are speaking to the amendment.
Every day's a school day. Chair, the dam has bust, and Councillor Yates has turned up with his elastoplast, frankly. And just listening to his definition of how this money could be spent, what he's really saying is this is a revenue commitment. This is not a one-off. You've not been talking about a one-off spend in some form of process or piece of equipment or capital plant or whatever. This is having people to go and help people. Well, we don't do that one-offs. That is actually a commitment. So what we've done is actually invest not 2 million, but significantly more than that to actually address climate change causality of flooding. So we recognise that actually, and we need to work with both with partners and with landowners on this as well. We want to have more plant and more dig-down teams and more flood specialists, flood management specialists in the council. We want to do more of that. And Mark DeVille's team are already investigating how we will reprofile what we do in terms of highway maintenance and response to ensure that it is aligned with changes in the climate and the flooding and all the other implications that gives us those problems. This is not a small one-off thing. And the worst thing, the most cynical thing about this amendment is it's purely locked into the election. It's purely gesturing. It's purely headline grabbing. And I have to say, this is the worst kind of electioneering, when you bring it into this chamber like this and try and knock off an odd amendment that you think, no, as everybody said, no actual concerns or thoughts about all the pressures and risks that this council is facing and that we need to deal with. And Councillor Atkins, your Councillor Atkins, by the way, the comments on 14 years of Tory government have led us into this mess. Where were you in opposition? Where were you in terms of having a look at what you might expect to find in government? It's open and transparent. You know, the OBR there is an open and transparent process to allow you to understand the nation's finances before you get there, so you don't turn up and spend the next 2 years complaining that it was the previous landlords that have got us into this mess and there's nothing we can do about it. So we're going to put your national insurance up. We're going to tax your farms. We're going to destroy business confidence. And that's not our fault. That's the other lot. But you had time to organise. You had time and opposition to actually think, well, how are we going to approach this from day one? Or are we just going to go in day one, eyes covered, open our eyes and think, oh my God, look what we found. Is that responsible opposition? Is that responsible government? Or is that just knee-jerk, political, cynical, headline grabbing and vote winning? I doubt it's that. Vote winning politics. There's a lot to learn, folks.
Thank you, Councillor Parry. We may move to a vote. It doesn't have to be a name vote. It's simply on the amendment. I want to make that clear. We are voting on the amendment, and it's a show of hands. Those for the amendment. Those against the amendment. I think it's fair to say that the amendment is dismissed. It's not carried. We are now going back to the substantive on item 5. So those that want to speak, we are now moving back to item 5. Councillor Graham Hutton.
Thank you, Chairman. A quick recap of history was the financial crisis, Labour leaving the coffers empty, a pandemic, Putin's war. Wow. I would like to congratulate the Cabinet, the SLT, in particular Councillor Parry, on the budget. Also, all those that have scrutinised this budget, such as the Audit Committee. Not only have we coped with the government's cuts and raids, we have set a balanced budget and set the third lowest council tax for a shire county in England. Recently, I looked at debt per resident, and SCC is one of the lowest in the country. Unlike the councils that surround us, which all seem to be on the verge of bankruptcy or bankrupt. In fact, I would like to go further. I argue that this council is so well run that it should be running the country. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Members, I have no further speakers, so I'll call Councillor Alan White, followed by Councillor Ian Parry. Councillor Alan White.
I rise to second the motion and having reserved my right earlier. Well, Councillor Hutton, what a challenge, eh? And I thought Section 19 was complicated, let alone running a country. Look, the budgetary process is a very complicated one. And I think I do this most years now, which is that this is a very serious business that we engage in this morning. And it's serious because the vote that we take enables money to be taken out of people's pockets. And we should never do that lightly, frivolously, or without a care. Because those people who can't afford it will struggle to pay it, will face sanction. And so we should be very careful about ever considering taking money out of people's pockets. And that, I think, is what makes me a Conservative. I only want to take the minimum we can to deliver the services we are required to the best of our ability. And it falls upon us to make sure that those services we deliver are efficient, that no pound is wasted. And I can give Council assurance that every single Cabinet member in this authority and all members of scrutiny ensure that we oversee the good spending, the efficient spending and of our money, and no wastefulness by this authority. There's more we would love to do, believe you me. We are limited by the amount of finance we can raise, and we also constrain ourselves because we know the impact it has on our residents, those people who may well be struggling to pay their council tax bills. So whilst I rise to second this motion and have nothing to add, further to add to the introduction that Councillor Parry gave to it, I urge you, as you vote for this motion or not, to do so with a degree of solemnity and respect for the residents that we will be levying this tax from. With that, Mr. Chairman, I second the motion.
Councillor Parry, do you want to come back?
Just say thank you very much indeed for the comment and lack of comments from the opposition, which is disappointing in such an important motion debate that we could have had. And finally, Chair, to recommend to Council to approve the recommendations on page 23, 24, 25 as printed.
I've now given the chance for Councillor White and Councillor Parry to respond to the debate. I will now ask the Chief Executive to take a name vote on the recommendations before the Council. I would once again remind members that under Section 106 of the Local Government Finance Act 1992, if they are 2 months or more in arrears with their council tax, it is an offence for them to vote on the budget. Members are also required to disclose at this meeting the fact that this section applies to them. Chief Executive.
Thank you, Chairman. We'll move into a named vote, if we may. I shall move forward for those present in alphabetical order. If you could please indicate if you are for or against the recommendations that have been set in front of you. So, Councillor Abrams. For. Councillor Afsar. Abstain. Councillor Charlotte Atkins. Abstain. Councillor Philip Atkins. For. Councillor Clements. For. Councillor Cox. For. Councillor Davies. For. Councillor DeVille. For. Councillor Eagland. For. Councillor Edgeler. For. Councillor Farrell. For. Councillor Funder. For. Councillor Heath. For. Councillor Hewitt.
For.
Councillor Hood. Abstain. Councillor Huckfield. For. Councillor Hudson. For. Councillor Hussain. Councillor Hutton. For. Councillor Jessel. For. Councillor Chris-Conchick. Councillor Loughborough Rudd. Apologies. For. Councillor McMahon. For. Councillor Northcote. For. Councillor Pardesi. Abstain. Councillor Parry. For. Councillor Pert. For. Councillor Peters. For. Councillor Price. Councillor Pritchard. For. Councillor Sylvester Hall. For. Councillor Smith. For. Councillor Snape. For. Councillor Spencer. For. Councillor Sutherland. For. Councillor Sutton, Councillor Sweeney, Councillor Tagg, Councillor Thompson, Councillor Ward, Councillor Waring, Councillor Alan White, Councillor Philip White, Councillor Wilkes, Councillor Wilson, Councillor Willington, Councillor Worthington, and Councillor Yates. Thank you.
I think we can move on to you. Thank you, members. The result of that vote is 42-4. Nobody voted against, and there were 6 abstentions. We now, it's fair to say that's carried. We may now move on to item 6, the statement of the Leader of the Council. Councillor Alan White, will you move consideration of the statement, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move consideration of the Leader's statement.
Item 1 of the Leader's statement, which is Staffordshire means back to business. Councillor Keith Flunder.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to really draw members' attention really to bullet point 3 about the levelling up funding and everything else. The work is still ongoing. I'd like to really draw people's attentions to what the work that's been going on in Leek, which has been partly fulfilled at the moment with the reopening of the markets that are going to be happening very shortly, and the great work that's been done there by officers from both the district and the county. And I'd like to have a short little thank you to the officers who have called meetings and drawn people into the work that's being done at the Nicholson Institute, which is something that we'll hopefully enjoy and make sure that the library has a very long life going into the future. So overall, the money that we've managed to get together, both at the district, has been supported by the County Council through its various guises to be able to spend millions of pounds on the investment within the town centres across the whole county at various points, and on the roads as well in other areas. And I think it's really important to note that we are still continuing work as normal. We are still investing in the county, and I think that it's a very important part of the process. We've just voted the budget through, and I think that this sort of work will hopefully continue long past May. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Mark Winnington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to sort of slightly take paragraph 3, but on a slightly different approach, and that is that we are in a situation now which everybody should be aware of local government reorganisation. Now, I personally feel that we've got to be really careful as a county council because we are so good. Why should we be sort of subsumed by another authority that won't give us what we need with the tools we need to go forwards in terms of the economy? Just a few examples of what we've done over the last few years as a county. I-54, that wasn't just county council, that was partnership working. We were working with South Staffs Council and Wolverhampton, and that gave us a special relationship with JLR. Lakeside at Cannock, again, massive sheds there, working with Staffordshire and Cannock District Council and the LEP. Stafford, prime point. Everyone who's been down the A34 or tried to go down the A34, because there's a few roadworks at the moment, will see some of the sheds that have been put up there. We really are a county council. As a county council, we do make things move. Sangaban, Pans Drive, anyone in Stafford will know this. Staffordshire County Council have been a big driver in that, working with the Borough Council and with government. We managed to actually build a new factory for Sangaban so that the site at Doxey could be utilised. That'll open up housing to the west of Stafford, and again that's attracted a grant of £20 million from the last Conservative government, which is now sort of being distributed through the Borough Council working with the County Council. Shire Hall, anyone who is in Stafford will be proud of Shire Hall. I understand it's full at the moment. One of many enterprise deliverers across the county. And just even on the bigger stuff, the stuff that doesn't get mentioned, we as a county worked with the then Mayor, Andy Street, to get a new train service. Anyone who's been on the trains, and I've been recently several times, West Midlands trains, I think, are the best trains in the whole of the fleet of smaller trains. That franchise was given with the help of Staffordshire County Council. So we can do things on our own. We are a strategic authority, I think, without getting too bogged down with local government reorganisation. Staffordshire has always been open for business, and indeed is open to business and open for business. Now, just again taking on what Councillor Atkins said earlier, our Councillor Atkins, this terrible inheritance tax. It's not just farmers it affects, let's be honest. It affects businesses as well, particularly small businesses. It's not just us, it's the small businesses that have got enough challenges without this attack. Double taxation. They work all their lives to gain a position where they've got some money in the back pocket, and Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, it just wants it. Let's have some of that. Let's get rid of this heinous death tax. That's all it is. Get rid of it for everyone, not just the farmers, and let's get the country moving again. And I'm proud to be in Staffordshire. I know we can do a lot of things as a county, and please, if you hear anyone say Staffordshire's great, we can manage, we don't need to be a part of another authority. Thank you.
Councillor Richard Cox.
Is he? Me. Sorry, I didn't hear that, sorry. Obviously, back to business, it's important. Economic growth is important. I think Councillor Winnington's made a very valuable point. And may I just try and bring some reality to that decision that was made by the Chancellor. A much loved shop, not just in Lichfield, but also Uttoxeter, offering an extremely wonderful service, especially for school children, ensuring that shoes are fitted properly and they are right for the children in terms of their growth. I actually had on another matter, the owners of a business that has been in Lichfield since the turn of the last century, 1904. And I was in their kitchen over another matter, only 3 days after the Chancellor's announcements. And my word, was it a depressing situation having a cup of coffee with two committed people who have struggled with the business from COVID. They've kept themselves above the line and they're still in business. That decision with the NI and everything else that followed to it was the last straw that broke the camel's back. And sadly, a week ago, I think they announced that Utoxeter store would close immediately, and with much help from Lichfield District Council to see if there was ways. Sadly, they announced at the weekend that Lichfield store is to close. And they, yesterday, started their clearance of stock. This is not good news for our communities. It is not good news in terms of giving that enthusiasm, confidence that we are going to have an economic growth forward. This is backward step. It's going to make sure, and it won't, I've got to have a feeling, it's not going to be the last. Our towns and villages and everybody have now been given such a whammy that we will have to see how it progresses. And I don't think, on the basis of an established business that really offers great to our people, that, you know, in our residents. And I would want to see, obviously, the council doing what they can to ensure that we're in a position to help others as much as possible. But on the back of a government decision, we're going to be at an uphill journey, and certainly echo the situation with the farmers. It is a bad enough time for them at any time, but goodness gracious, they're the ones that really do work throughout the miserable weather and hours and everything else that goes with it. And what are you doing? They're going to have a real issue. So it's it's a devastation that's ahead of ourselves. Chairman, I like the report, but I think there's warning signs are there for us to take heed.
Councillor Nigel Yates.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just again, looking at paragraph 3, with regards to the levelling up bid and picking up from Councillor Flunder's comments. Just a little bit of background information on levelling up. It was introduced in 2020. It was a competitive bidding process which, instead of being targeted to the most deprived areas, the areas which have suffered from an industrial decline, was a competitive bid, and who was better positioned to write those bids. £10.6 billion was allocated by the last government. As at the end of 2024, only £2.5 billion was spent. Now, as those schemes close, I expect that to increase, but there is a lot of evidence that councils have returned the money because they can't afford the top-up of the fixed grant because of inflation. I'm pleased to say, as Councillor Flunder reiterated, we inherited a successful bid for leak, and the Labour administration is one administration which will be spending its full allocation, has stepped up to the plate and made sure that any additional costs and requirements are covered, and we will deliver our 3 projects complete and on time.
Councillor Philip Atkins.
Thank you, Chair. This whole paragraph and the subsections is a really good written examples of what we're doing and continuing to do. And so well done to the team for that. Mark Winnington mentioned some of the things that we did as a county council. He missed out Kiel University and the University Quarter, the A50, A500 work, ongoing work that we're doing, and Lichfield Southern Bypass. There's a whole host of them, Mark, that just haven't got time. Branston, oh, you know, the list. I go around the county and I see the results of 16 years of our administration going up. But councils don't do business. They don't create wealth. They just put in place the things, the education, the skills strategy, the infrastructure, allow the people to do things, talk to the partners. Mark was quite right about I-54. That was really complex with 2 LECs, a unitary, a district and a county council, award-winning, that's brought about 10,000 jobs on that site. Previous administration would have said, well, it's not going to benefit us. That's what I was told. Because 16 years ago, Staffordshire was the worst performing sub-region of the worst performing region in the country. It is now one of the most successful manufacturing and business areas for people to come to and have a nice life in a beautiful rural county and have a good, well-paid job. Well done. That's what we need. But what's happening now? Well, you know, I know because of my daughter, JCB's national insurance additional bill is £10 million. Where's that going to go? Is that going to go on the price of the digger? Or is it going to mean less workers and you work a bit harder? That's for my daughter to decide, not for me. Somebody mentioned the inheritance tax, business property relief. Already that's affecting sales of machinery to farmers. The order books have gone bump, like that. This isn't just an inheritance tax, it isn't just on farmers, it's on businesses as well. Hard-earned private business. A lot of them, 4 or 5 or 10 people. You soon get to £1 million, believe me. A combine's £750,000. Tractors, 150,000. Everything's gone up by 30%. So what's been the effect on our Labour MPs? Our Labour MPs have signed a letter to the supermarkets asking them to give the farmers more money for the produce we make. Where's that coming from? Where's that coming from? The processors, the people who haul the food around the country? If I had £100 a tonne more for my wheat, I guarantee I'd get about £10 of it. The rest would go to pay the manufacturers of the tractors, the fertiliser, the feed would immediately go up. The seeds, they'd all want more money, and the supermarkets would have to treble the price in the supermarket to make paying for all of that. Oh, and by the way, there's a carbon levy coming in very soon on anything that's not manufactured in our country that has a carbon element into it. Very good on the climate change, but we don't make any of it. Fertiliser, up £100 a tonne. Cement, now that's not too bad. We do have it at Caldon Low, one of the biggest carbon dioxide generators in our county. In fact, Moorlands will never, ever get to net zero because of that factory. The steel, well, what do we do with steel? Gone. So, well done. We are battling against the tide. And we're keeping unemployment down because people in work are happier, healthier, and commit less crime. That's what this is all about, the people of Staffordshire. And we, or whatever body comes after us, with Stoke in it as well, will have a massive job to carry on doing this. Otherwise, our residents will be poorer and they won't have a happy life. They won't be healthy and there will be even more crime. This is really critical and I hope our Cabinet carry on the good work. Thank you very much.
Councillor Philip White.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, so I think this report is a good sample of the sort of work that we do around the county with our partners, both in local government, so the district and borough councils, with other organisations such as training providers, but crucially with businesses, as Councillor Atkins said, because they're the ones that actually do the economic growth. All that we can do is clear barriers out of the way and help in small ways to do things businesses can't do for themselves. I think the highlight in here for me is always our unemployment rate, half the regional average and 1/3 less than the national average. But there are some considerable risks that we're facing. In fact, not risks, realities, things that are happening right now. We were discussing earlier the change in terms of the management of the economy nationally and the country's budget. It's interesting always to hear about this supposed black hole that the last government left. And of course, if you raise your eyes to look at the rest of the world, other Western economies, surprise, surprise, you find very similar situations in other countries' finances due to small things like the COVID pandemic and the massive costs we had to spend in keeping everyone's heads above water during that, and the largest war in Europe since World War II. So it's just interesting, isn't it, where you choose to set your sights on this. But the government's response to that has a real impact here in Staffordshire. So we apparently have a growth-oriented government. Their approach to that has been to hammer business since they were elected. National insurance increases, as Councillor Cox mentioned, Friary shoes in Lichfield and Uttoxeter, where my little boy's had some of his shoes fitted over the last few years, who specifically said we've had to close because we can't afford to pay the bills anymore. Buying shoes has not been as high a priority for people in recent years because of the cost of living. We were keeping going. Chancellor shut us down, and they said it explicitly. And the burdens being placed on small businesses are really the opposite of what we do here in Staffordshire. Whereas we try and clear barriers out of the way, we're seeing a government that is placing those burdens on them in this naive approach that seems to think, oh, business can manage it, from a cabinet that has not one single person who's run a large business. Run a business at all, actually, not a single one. The other thing that government has done for us, the other big thing, and it relates to wonderful pieces of work, such as the £20 million of investment into Stafford. I would imagine Councillor Pardesi would feel that that is needed. Councillor Yates here in Stafford. And investments in other places such as Leek, but all around Staffordshire for Towndale's Future High Streets Fund, Levelling Up Fund. Massive investment, £240 million, I think, into our county, which we are delivering effectively. What has government decided to do? They've decided, whilst we're trying to deliver all of this and all the other services we deliver here, they'll make us completely reorganise. So they'll take that ecosystem we have of a strong county council and strong districts and boroughs, irrespective of political control, that's working well. Council here, one of the lowest council tax in the country, balanced budget going forwards, unlike other places in the country. And we will decide you have to spend the next couple of years reorganising rather than focusing on delivery of projects such as these. Now, I want to assure you, colleagues, and anyone else listening, that we will not take our eye off the ball, and particularly our officers, who are more impacted than we are by this, will not take their eye off the ball either, because they are consummate professionals. We will keep on supporting our businesses in all of the ways that you can see here, and many others. But thank you, Rachel Reeves, Keir Starmer, et al., for making our job so much more difficult. Their response to the economic challenges that we have and the opportunities that we unlock here in Staffordshire is really not a very helpful one. But we will continue. Thank you.
Moving on to item 2 on the leader statement, which is Staffordshire Housing Care Strategy 2024 to 2029. Councillor Charlotte Atkins.
I seek clarification, really, on this particular paragraph. This is housing with care strategy. Does that include just extra care housing, or does that include care homes, retirement living? Because they're obviously very different. Now, as I understand it, extra care housing is very much like what occurs in Daisy Hay and Leek, which is basically residents living independently, but with 24-hour care if required. And an extra care living facility would have activities, it would have an area to socialise, so it wouldn't, and it would also have meals on offer as well. Now, I appreciate you're having problems listening because of the noise behind you. So I'll say that again, so that you can understand what I'm saying. What I'm asking about is whether this is just about extra care housing, or whether it includes other forms of retirement living, including care homes. Because in Leek, we have Daisy Hay, which has been very successful as a retirement living complex. An extra care living complex. What it does, it offers 24-hour care if required. Meals are on offer if required. There's an area to socialise. There are activities provided. And that's very different from retirement living, where there are separate flats which do not offer any of these facilities. Now, the issue is that in Daisy Hay and Leek does have a waiting list, And there appears to be demand for this sorts of extra care housing because it makes sense. It keeps people independent, it provides a level of care if needed, and obviously, therefore, is likely to get people living independently for longer, not having to go into a care home, not having to go into a nursing home, which would be far more expensive. But there obviously has to be an incentive to housing associations and other businesses to look at the demand for extra care housing. If that demand is not demonstrated in a paper like this, then there is no incentive for them to build or to develop those sorts of excellent facilities. So I'd like that clarification because I know that there are potential buildings within Leek which could be developed as extra care housing, but obviously there has to be a business case for doing that. And without that business case, those initiatives, whether it be in partnership with District Council or not, will not happen.
Councillor Jill Hood.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to really put out a plea for our care leavers and their housing circumstances. Most of our care leavers have gone into care through traumatising circumstances, and many carry that trauma into their adult lives. We must make sure that their housing needs are provided for when we are considering safe and affordable homes. We can't keep sending these young people out of area, sending them away from everything that they know, trust and hold dear. I'd like to ask you, and this is my plea, that when you're talking to prospective housing developers, other local authorities, other council colleagues, that you spare a thought for these young care leavers who we're not allowed to put into bed and breakfast, but are prepared to send to places such as Birmingham, Cannock, Rugeley, really away from the areas that they know. Can you talk to your colleagues and ask them to mention them? We are their future, and to make sure that they're safe, we have to speak up for them. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Councillor Markson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hadn't intended to speak on this matter, but the points raised by Councillor Hood relate to my portfolio as opposed to this actual item in here. She will know, as part of the corporate parenting panel, that housing has formed a strong part of what we intend to do, and that we are working hard with districts and boroughs, and there is a housing representative who sits on corporate parenting that is able to take things back and report. There are numerous working groups around this area, and I can assure the member opposite that with the corporate parenting strategy going forward, that housing for our care leavers is paramount in that. And we'll also notice, going back to a previous item, in the budget that there is a line in there where we have increased our care leaver offer by almost £500,000 per year going forward for the next 5 years. Thank you.
Councillor Jeremy Pirt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, colleagues. Thank you for the two questions. Let me just put the housing with care strategy in some context, if I may, please. So this is not a housing strategy. This is, which is obviously a devolved matter to districts and boroughs. And I welcome the comments from Mr. Winnington earlier in the debates today about local government reorganisation. Because for me, this strategy is a really good demonstration of enhanced two-tier working. It's really important that the county council, who retains the care element of supporting people, whilst the districts and boroughs hold the housing element, and making sure that the two work together in harmony is really important. So the purpose of this strategy is to ensure that some of the most vulnerable adults in the county are properly supported to meet their needs. I will come to your question in a minute, though, because you're looking very concerned, Councillor Atkins. And equally, people want to be able to live as independent lives as possible and to be supported within communities. And bolting housing with care as a strategy together is really important. The other point I'd like to make is that it is likely that every district and borough will have a slightly different flavour. And to Mrs. Hood's point, I would just make the point that it's up to districts and boroughs to make sure that their housing allocation policy meets the needs and the flavour of those individual areas. And whilst the County Council does extensive amounts of work making sure that the transition of care leavers is properly managed and their needs are accounted for within Care Act assessments and within these strategies, there is always more that jointly with partners we can do. Just picking up that partnership point, I do want to thank our district and borough colleagues for their work into making sure that this strategy came together and is as robust as it is. I also want to thank the Leaders Board, because this has been through the Leaders Board and is a really good demonstration again of that two-tier working. So on to the point or the question that was raised by Mrs. Atkins. Extra care is included within the strategy. The strategy itself, and I would encourage members to read the strategy, really clearly indicates what's in scope and what's out of scope of the strategy. What's in scope is extra care, supported living, housing with care requirements for people with adult social care needs in relation to homelessness and rough sleeping, as is shared lives and general housing needs for people with adult social care needs. What's out of scope for this strategy is nursing and residential care homes, and what is also outside of the strategy is retirement living schemes. But the purpose of the strategy is to help identify that demand. We know that the population in Staffordshire is growing by 3% a year, and that's principally people over 65, exclusively, not principally, exclusively. And that's been referred to in today's budget by Mr. Parry. And part of the reason for having the strategy is to identify the demand and then let the market meet that demand, whether that's housing associations, private owners, or if need be, and the County Council is developing care homes where there is a deficiency within local markets, the county can step in. But obviously the purpose of that is so that local plans can reflect local need. Care leavers receive some of the worst outcomes that we see. So it's really important that we do take every opportunity to support those care leavers, and I welcome the comments from my colleague opposite.
Thank you. Can I very gently remind members that once the Cabinet member has risen to speak, then I don't take any speakers after that on an item. Moving on to item 3, which is the Customer Experience Strategy. I have no speakers. I'm happy to move on. Let's move on. Moving on to item 4, which is the item 4 is the Modern Methods of Construction Framework Agreement. Again, I have no speakers. Let's move on. Moving on to item 5, which is the Devolution and Local Government Reorganisation. I guess, quite rightly, we have some speakers on this one. Councillor Thomas Loughborough-Rudd.
Thank you, Chair. Good luck to John Traybold in your retirement. I remember when I found out about this, I was having a tooth out, actually, and I think that will be the experience for most councils across the country. I don't agree with it. I don't want it. My residents don't want it. I've seen lots in the paper in the North Staffordshire about the Greater Stoke, but I haven't seen enough about South Staffordshire, so I'm going to talk about it. I've had more emails on this than I've ever had in anything, because Burnt would be dramatically affected by any kind of organisational change, as with parts of Lichfield. And I don't think we need to do this. I think that our two-tier system works. I think that even regardless of party, I think the Staffordshire Leaders Board, which Councillor White chairs, I think is an incredible achievement. I think that the government, which I try not to play politics, but I'm going to say I'm ashamed of the government for this. I think that it's party political. I think I credit the leadership of Staffordshire for being one of the few councils in the country not to apply for delay, by the way. I think that was ridiculous. Most of our partners. I'd also like to make a point on the 500,000 limit, which is mentioned in the government paper. Because if this is to apply to all authorities, then I'd like to know when it applies to the urban authorities that surround us. Because none of the Black Country authorities fit that number. So are we going to see that, or is this just a Shire County thing? But I think that generally that we must, and I think about the people whose jobs will be lost, because regardless of what whoever agrees this is going to be a difficult process. It seems that the government is going to ensure that we do that, so we must get the best deal for Staffordshire. It must be a deal that reflects the thing. And it will probably be a mayor, which I don't agree with either, because I can see justifications for a mayor of the West Midlands. The mayor of Staffordshire, I find difficult. The difference between Leek and Burntwood, which I represent, is incredible. But I think that we should really go to a referendum personally. But I wish the council leadership luck, because they're going to need it, because there is going to be awful loads of issues. Our addiction services are currently spread, are currently spread and funded on the county council lines. Our housing is, of course, within our district. In my division, of course, we have Tracewater, which is on the border. And, of course, parts of Cannock Chase, if all goes wrong, would be in a different council. So I think that, all in all, this government policy is probably the worst thing I've seen for a long time. I'm not entirely against the unitary authority, if I'm honest. If it was thought out democratic and not a back of the fag paper issue, which this seems to be. This seems to be highly political, and I hope that we get the best deal that we can, but I don't think generally this idea is good at all. I wanted that on note. Thank you.
Councillor David Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. Come May, I will have served 34 years in local government as a councillor. And I suppose during those 34 years, I've seen everything. There's not a great deal that will come up that I haven't seen, and it's either failed or succeeded. I've worked at regional, national, local, and at county level. And when we start to consider the decision-making levels that come from those various levels of council, one is not something that can work well with the other. We look at the county and we make very high-level corporate decisions. I asked when I first came onto the county, what's the difference between the county and my local district? And I was told the number of noughts on the end of the bill. And I think that reflects the sort of things which the county council does. But it also makes it very, very clear of those of us that have been district or borough councillors, how we have pursued our local enthusiasm for what we need to deliver at a local level. If I recall my time as chairman of the Regional Assembly, we used to have a budget for highways. And this was done on a government-specified point system. I would emphasise a Labour government, typical point system. When we came to allocating funding, Birmingham came first, and by the time we'd finished, there was nothing at all left to fund anything at all in Staffordshire. Now, if we start to apply that, and we start to look at the size of Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent, we're looking at something which is much the same sort of size as Birmingham, and we know what a basket case Birmingham is. But if we were to look at how we would have a county-wide unitary, or whatever breakdown of unitary that might be, what we're looking at is something which, to go from my division to Biddulph, is 50 miles. 50 miles. How can you talk about local government for people who are 50 miles apart? They have different issues, they have different problems, and different priorities. But when you start to allocate priorities, how do you sort out the priorities of, for example, Lichfield and the priorities of Stoke-on-Trent? Because you can very quickly see where the money is going to go. So, Chairman, I'm very concerned at what we're looking at. I look here on the item in front of us. It says no proposal on how this might work for Staffordshire on Stoke-on-Trent has yet been agreed. Too damn right it hasn't, because it doesn't solve any of the problems that we have. But I would feel concerned, Chairman, that during the latter days of the last Labour government, there was a determination to deliver on unitary authorities. They ran out of time, and so it never happened. When we look now that we've got 4.5 years for them to deliver on unitary authorities, I do not see that they will run out of time as far as Staffordshire is concerned, and what they see from urban residents into rural areas, how they will come to a conclusion on how we would be best managed. I think that it is the destruction, Chairman, of local government. Thank you.
Councillor Philip Atkins.
Me? Interesting. I just had a conversation outside, which reminded me of when I first got elected, David. I'm sorry I beat you. It was 38 years ago when I was elected to the then Staffordshire County Council. There were 82 members. There were only 22 members who were Conservative, so we sat over there. And the rest of the chamber was Labour. There were 20 from Stoke. The meetings went on all day, till about 5 o'clock, when we were threatened with, "You'll be coming back tomorrow morning." We had a blue book and a grey book. The grey book was basically what was here before us today. The blue book was the 500 schools that we were responsible for. We were also responsible for the police. And we had a police authority, we had members on it, but they reported here. We were responsible for fire. We were responsible for the magistrates' courts. And so the list went on. I was put on buildings, education committee, subgroup, buildings. I had to go round and look at all the classroom extensions on the 500 schools. The workload, we got paid £20 for attending a meeting. And that was it. That was it. You got your expenses and £20, which back in 1990 wasn't a lot of money, really. Anyway, you know, the things changed, and we've taken advantage of all the changes that have gone on. The districts had housing, they had planning, we had strategic planning, and the districts hated us for having the structure plan and the minerals plan. So none of this is new. I think this is the third or the fourth reorganisation plan that I've had round, because I always used to say, Minister, if you want to distract the councils, we'll just get the LGR file, Local Government Review file, off the shelf. This will get them all distracted and talking about other things, and they won't bother you, Minister. You know, you can always find things wrong with them. So there's lots going on. I have to say, you know, I wish that the new authority, whatever it is, well. And I hope that Staffordshire has the sense to stick together as one and not split up into different factions. However, the other bit is that it also puts a lot of localism. If we believe in localism and the decisions are made best closer to the people that it affects by their representatives, by their political representatives, not by officers. Because when I first got on, officers made the decisions, and if it was a difficult decision, it suddenly became a political decision. And then we had to make our minds up about what we were going to do. So I feel sorry for those involved with this. I hope they ask for the experiences of others rather than the ambitions of some to further their careers or whatever it may be, or their factions, and that we focus on what's best for the people of Staffordshire and ignore what the centre and Whitehall and the civil servants there who cannot work together at all. They're still siloed, but we've managed to get our silos working together, wherever they may be, police, fire, districts, county, health, wherever they are. So if we stick at trying to get people to work together, which may be why, in that previous life that I had back in 1987 to 95, 97, we had all of those bodies in here reporting. But the one I always remember, Chairman, is the Magistrates Committee, because if there was ever empire building, that was the one. And it ended up, where have we ended up? One magistrates' court. That's your local justice. So be careful. Be careful. Because if you have local justice, the newspapers responded. Now you can get away with a speed awareness course. But back in the old days, your name would be in the paper that Mr. Alan White was caught speeding at 50 miles an hour in a 40-mile-an-hour area, rather than go on a speed awareness course. So, thank you, Chairman.
Moving on from Alan White's speeding charge, which I presume is purely fiction, I would just say, which I have to say is purely fiction. I have to call Councillor Derek Hookfield. Councillor Derek Hookfield. Just stand up and talk, Derek.
Can I just say, I mean, when you've been in politics as long as me, just the same as Philip over there and others, right, that have been involved with all these different things, it just keeps raising its head. It wasn't so long ago I did a mass petition for the whole of the borough of Newcastle, right, concerning joining Stoke-on-Trent, right. Finally, it got thrown out, right, and that was the best thing that happened, because we love Newcastle. We don't want to go in with Stoke-on-Trent, right, because we know everybody within the area and the area that you represent. If somebody's got a problem, there's no hesitation on how they get in touch with you, right? There's then many different ways. But if you split it up, and let's take a saying, I live in Silverale, and I've got to make my way to somebody with the complaint that's in Stoke-on-Trent, right? It just isn't on. And the cost must be tremendous to do it, right? To do the complete change. Who come up with this wonderful idea, right? I don't know, but within the Labour Party, right, what happens, they come up with these ideas. And after a bit, right, once they put them into function, right, they did the same with the care homes, right? After a bit, they put it into function, and then they realised, right, they've made a mistake, and it's too late. Because the cost of reverting back costs an arm and a leg. It costs you an absolute fortune. And really, it isn't the councillors that you should be asking, it's the people out there. And the people out there want to stop as they are, because that's the reaction that I get from the people. And I'll leave it at that, because let the people decide.
Councillor Richard Cox.
Thank you. Devolution. I have problems in sense with devolution. I had problems many years back when the United Kingdom of Great Britain was devolved into 4 nations. 4 nations that now bicker. Scotland have this. England haven't got this. Wales have this. England haven't got that. Is this not a time to be, in a sense, united and address something that Councillor over there said, local government. I've gone a step further, and I said it last night. Local democracy. It's about being accountable to local people about local issues. And let's be honest, issues that will be different from Leek, Biddulph, down to Kinver, down in the south, Tamworth, and so on. I think the boroughs and districts, certainly the districts, are acutely aware of about what you could have with them and us. We hear Lichfield, Burntwood. How often do we hear Lichfield, Burntwood? And I'm sure in East Staffordshire, it's Burton, Uttoxeter. And if we look at the moorlands, perhaps it's Biddulph and Leek. And the examples continue. Cannock Chase, Rugeley, Cannock. And what matters and what draws it close is that that local accountability will stand up for their areas. And this is what is danger. And it is, and Councillor Loughborough-Rudd made the reference of the back of a fag packet. You've been very generous, Councillor Loughborough-Rudd. I'd go to a mini stamp. It absolutely is ludicrous. And it beggars belief that people from London can determine with a broad brush and not take the accountability of local government. And local government, in a national crisis that we had within COVID, delivered. And my guess would be, under any system that may, and of course we don't know what the system will be, they haven't even bothered to tell us, you know, create a white paper, let's get the discussion. But by the way, you've only got a few weeks to respond to it. Absolutely insulting, appalling and disgraceful. And this government is contemptible to the point that you could say it's dictatorship. You will have no choice of the matter. We have a resounding majority. Well, you haven't, because you add the people up, you have got a very small majority. But in terms of the system we have, and I'm not denouncing the system we have, but don't get carried away with all your members of Parliament, because quite frankly, people will realise, and have already realised, where they stand with this government. And we have to protect what is best for our residents. I've been talking to many people across my division. Not one is saying, what a great idea. So, Chairman, thank you for allowing me to say what I said, but this is passion. And passion belongs locally, what is right for your people that voted for me, voted for you. It isn't about what's happening about elsewhere. And I hope common sense will prevail.
Members, I still have quite a number of speakers on this item. Councillor Simon Take.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I'd like to firstly be associated with comments from Councillor Loughborough-Rudd, Councillor Cox and Councillor Smith over there. And particularly, it's good to see a councillor from Burntwood who actually gets this, because one of the Labour councillors in Burntwood, who I've seen take it to social media criticising me, doesn't seem to get it. This is forced local government reorganisation, sprung upon everybody just before Christmas, and it's been attached to devolution, giving devolution, I believe, a bad name now, actually. And of course, it means the scrapping of the districts and boroughs, and of course, make no mistake, the scrapping of this county council as well. We've seen some good examples of two-tier working today. I think it was Councillor Spirt and others have mentioned them. And also, we have a devolution deal that was submitted in September. At that point, the government hadn't revealed this springing on us of local government reorganisation at that point. It was about devolution, and and about the best way to devolve powers and also the money associated with that to local people so that they could spend that better on skills, education, regeneration, all those types of things which are important to people. And it was put in by the Leaders Board. I signed that up as leader of Newcastle Borough Council. Councillor White, Alan White, signed up as the county council's leader, and all the districts and the city put that forward. A way of delivering devolution, all those things I've just talked about, within the existing structures. The government, I still believe, have not responded to that September offer at all. So we now have this thrust upon us. And I think we were talking earlier about councils around us. I think it's Councillor Atkins mentioned, our Councillor Atkins mentioned that earlier. And if we look at all those councils around us, there, I think it was Councillor Hutton as well, that are in these financial difficulties, they're all unitary authorities, whether it's Cheshire East, whether it's Shropshire, whether it's the City of Stoke-on-Trent. And for the City of Stoke-on-Trent, that's a real important issue for me as a Newcastle Underline member, and I'm sure for other Newcastle Underline members, and Moorlands, our colleagues in Moorlands. And we have started a campaign to save our borough and say no to merger with Stoke, which is what this proposal would mean, I believe, because they say the 500,000 population, you know, that is the north of the county, isn't it? And we have started a petition. Over 2,100 people have signed it already in a little over a week, and we also have a paper version. I do have paper copies here if anybody wants to sign my petition today. You're more than entitled to, please do. And I think it's not just us here who are being little Newcastleians or little Staffordshire Wideians, whatever you want to call it. Look at some of the comments that have been made since the government have announced this. Local Government Association, chair, a Labour chair. The government also needs to commit funding to councils up front to deliver these reforms. Areas that have already gone through local government organisation relied heavily on reserves to utilise, and some estimates a one-off cost between 25 million and 100 million. Wasn't it supposed to be saving money? Didn't the Minister stand up in Parliament say it was about saving money? And it's imperative that these new unitary councils are financially viable and sustainable for the communities in the long term. And also in the local government information, you get an email every week, an article saying that residents near struggling councils in England may face increased council tax and reduced services under Labour's proposed devolution revolution. That's what they're calling it. And that's, for example, for us is the city of Stoke, isn't it, in the north? And I think affects the entire county, doesn't it? And it's raising concerns about that we'll be left to pick up the pieces. Our council taxes will rise to bail out those authorities which have, haven't run their affairs well, and I think it was Councillor Hutton that referred to that earlier. And then lastly, Mr Chairman, just quote from the MJ magazine from Dennis Reed, former chairman of the Local Government Information Unit and others. The biggest irony of this whole sorry business is that despite claims to be a devolution paper, what we have is a centralisation agenda dividing local government into deliverable units manageable by civil servants with a veneer of local democracy through elected mayors and centralisation. That has long been the agenda of the Treasury. And finally, we have a government now, unfortunately, that seems to have brought into the spurious grounds of growth and efficiency, while being blind and deaf to the consequences. If carried through, it will be the death of local democracy. I think it was Mr Smith that said that. And as we know, it will further marginalise local communities. A magic population number, which is what was referred to by Councillor over there, is mythical and a fallacy. And our councils are being destroyed because of it. We must resist.
Councillor Jeremy Pirt.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I associate with all of the comments from across the whole of the Chamber on this issue, and I won't reiterate or replay some of those arguments. But I do want to play a few different discussions. People like local councils, and I use the word local councils. They reflect local culture and traditions, not arbitrary drawn lines on a map. Now, there is no demonstration, in my view, of the benefit to local communities or residents. The benefits are really marginal versus the cost. The whole of this premise of local government reorganisation is based on a report done by PwC back in 2020, which suggested there will be a saving of between £2 and £3 billion Now, when I first read that, I thought, wow, that sounds worth having. Actually, that can support local services just at a time when, frankly, demand is going up, complexity is going up, costs are going up. And we've talked about that already with our budget today. Actually, the 2 or 3 billion is over 5 years. So you talk about 500 or 600 million pounds a potential benefit a year. When you then say, well, how much of that is how much does government spend in local government? It's less than 1%. The saving here that we're chasing, allegedly, assuming that PwC, who aren't actually local government officers, is right, and that's a big assumption, is less than 1%. Colleagues, you would lose that in the roundings. We are going to spend the next 2 years focused internally rather than focused on the reason we're here, which is to support our residents and support our communities. No one voted for this. No one. We've talked today that we're a well-run council. Why would you take a well-run council and then cut it up? It's just completely barking mad. I think one element of the debate that we've not touched on today is the impact on our staff. And I personally would like to lay on record, as one of the largest areas employing people within the council, my thanks to all of the staff for the work that they do supporting our communities, because in the end, that's what we want. We're here to support our communities, and if we didn't have those people putting in every ounce of energy, sweat, and determination to support our residents, then frankly, we wouldn't be able to do that. So I thank the staff and give a commitment to them. We will support them through what will be a very difficult process, because they are central to not only today, they will be central to the future delivery. I did want to also just touch on the point that Mr. Tagg made about the purpose here, about the centralisation of power. This isn't about devolution at all. This is about having fewer touch points for government to be able to dictate to. And if you don't agree with one side of things, then your funding disappears on another. It's really clear. It's so blatantly clear. But as a Stafford Borough member, I personally do not want to join the Greater Stoke. Very well said.
I have 2 more speakers left. Councillor Johnny McMahon.
Thank you, Chair. I wholeheartedly support the previous speakers. I think that the case has been well made without me having to get onto the floor. But I just want to change tack for a wee bit. To my mind, and I speak for us all, irrespective of the part of the aisle that we sit on, that local politicians, by and large, are profoundly honourable. They do a hugely great job. And the reason that they're honourable is they're so committed, we are so committed, to our local communities. Anything that tampers with that aggravates the alienation and the loneliness, and people find themselves on their own. Now, I want to quote, if I may, and you may find this trifle eccentric. I want to quote a fellow called Dryden, who was a social psychologist. And in the 1990s, he took the brains of primates and looked at their social grouping and came to the conclusion that the social grouping of a human being, given the fact that we've got big brains, is 150. So the fact that Cheadle is different from Leek, the fact that we're different in Cannock from, well, actually, Cannock is a bit different from even Hensford. If we lose that localism, we will lose the people. Because the close groups that we are involved in, family and friends, is 150, because that's all this can cope with. This is about human nature. And we've got to get back and keep the localism we've got and work on it and make it work. The other issue for me is I just wonder if this is going to lead not simply to officer-led organizations, but the politicians that are there will become professional politicians. And one of the great advantages of this place, as I see it, is the history and the skills and the background that everybody brings to this chamber. We do not want a system whereby that is lost, because a huge amount of skill, judgment, and expertise will be lost in the process. So you've heard that this is us being done to, rather than being consulted. But it's far, far more than that. What sort of communities do we want? Do we want to increase the social capital in our community, or do we want to let it deteriorate further? Because my feeling is that this will result in socially poorer places that are more alienated and more likely to lead to the sort of populism we see in continental Europe. Thank you.
I have one final speaker on this item, Councillor Stephen Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't want to say too much on this, apart from, well, a few things. One, I agree with every single word that has been said in this chamber today. Every word I agree with. So I'm not going to repeat it again, but everything. I think this is utterly, and I'll be as polite and politically correct as I can, bonkers. I can't see any benefit to this at all. I think it's absolutely... I was at the LJ conference a few months ago, and Jim McMahon was launching this at the conference. And I'm not exaggerating, I've said it didn't go down very well. He had to, in fact, at the end, he had to resort to the classical line. Well, I think Mr. Cox said, well, it's going to happen. So, suck it up and see, you know, it's going to happen. The first paragraph, in December, the government set out plans for how they would like to move powers from central to local government. It doesn't say the next line, by getting rid of it. That's what's happening. That whole level of local governments, all the districts, go. And that's going to make us more democratic. How does that work? I don't understand that. But this is going to make it more democratic. It's reverse. It's not devolution, it's reverse devolution. It's taking powers from the whole of the state and put them into one person, man or woman, I don't know, as a mayor. And they're going to be, and that's devolution. How's that devolution? I just don't understand it. The Labour Party in Newcastle are right up for this. They joining their comrades in Stoke, I think they think it's a wonderful idea. We're going to have, apparently in Newcastle, we're going to have a Newcastle Town Council. Newcastle Town Council. We haven't got a Newcastle Town Council, we've got a Borough Council. And somehow I think they think that everywhere's already parished. Well, if I think of Newcastle, Clayton's not got a parish council, Weston's not got, Tisbury's not got, Crossley's not got, nothing's not got. I can get a list of about 15 areas that don't have parishes, so I don't know how that's going to work. They're going to enhance these parishes, the powers the parishes have got. How? How's that going to happen? I don't know. I think it's badly thought out. I think it's undemocratic. I think it's something that has literally just been, somebody said, back of a stamp, never mind a fag packet. It's absolutely bonkers. I cannot see any benefit from this at all. And I'm very, very glad that every member who's spoken to this has totally agreed that it's just bonkers. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Alan White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my misfortune to be leader of the council at the time when the government tries to do local government reorganisation. This is a very, very difficult subject, requiring sensitivity, tact and determination. Councillor Loughborough-Rudd started off the debate with a point which was a showstopper. Wolverhampton City Council is 263,000 people. Dudley Council is 323,000 and Sandwell is 341,000. The government's guidance is that the size they're looking for the unitaries is 500,000 to 600,000. And yet there's no incentive or requirement for those unitaries to be part of the process of local government reorganisation. If it is the case that the unit of planning is 500,000, why is it targeted almost exclusively at shire counties? I think I have an answer to that, but I'll reserve that till later. They say a week is a long time in politics. It surely is. These papers are drafted and circulated internally amongst Cabinet about Monday of last week. By Wednesday of last week, they're signed off. By 6 o'clock on Wednesday of last week, another letter came out from Jim McMahon saying, oh, by the way, you need to do this, this and this, and these are your deadlines. Let me just put into perspective the deadlines that we are confronted with. in 1 month's time, 28 days' time, or well, really just 4 weeks, you've got 20 working days, really, and I will have to bring a proposal to Council about the changes that are required for us to submit as part of the statutory invitation. The statutory invitation is something that we can't avoid. We have to respond to it, because if we don't respond to it, others will, and we will get done too. My starting point, of course, is what's in the best interests of Staffordshire residents, and I hold that dear to my heart. Those are Staffordshire residents that live in Newcastle, in Flash, in Kinver, in Burton-upon-Trent, wherever you find them in the four corners of this county. That will be my guiding light. I will seek counsel from you, from residents, from partners, to come up with the best options that are available to us. It is disappointing, when listening to ministers, that it is clear that some elements of this reorganisation clearly have not been considered. On a webinar with the minister, when a council leader put to her that what's the status of parishes and how will they fit in, it clearly hadn't been considered. This is disappointing, because local government is an ecosystem. It is layers that work together to deliver the best for their residents. I just want to turn now to points made by Councillor Spirt around our officers. There are a lot of officers in all tiers in this county, at parish, district, borough, city and county. And what the government has done is presented them with a degree of uncertainty about their futures, which I think is intolerable. They have mortgages to pay. They have families. They have plans for the future, and now they don't know where they stand. It is for us to make sure that as we move through this, we do so in a sober way, that we don't take for granted the need for us to continue to deliver services for the residents, many of whom are the most in need, for the children we look after, for the frail and elderly adults that we care for those children with special educational needs who need our care so that they get the best start in life. I just want to conclude by giving you my undertaking that I will keep you as informed as I possibly can as we move through this. Last night we had a members' training session which was laid on at very short notice, and I'm grateful to senior officers for making themselves available for that training session to give you the best chance to know what the parameters are that we are confronted with. I will try to seek consensus where it is possible. We will try to ensure that the Staffordshire residents' interests are placed front and centre. But colleagues, these are difficult times. We are going to have to change the shape of local government. There are opportunities for us which we shouldn't let go of. The opportunity to devolve powers to this area, to seize the opportunities for transport, skills, infrastructure and the like. But it's important that as those powers are devolved, they have appropriate oversight to make sure people's views are democratically represented. So, at the next council meeting, it won't just be a paragraph on the leader's statement. There will be a motion to council. And we should realise the gravity of that motion right at the tail end of a quadrennial session. And the electorate will have their say in any event on the 1st of May. And we should remember that we are here to serve them. We are not here to serve our own purposes. And as people make their statements in the chamber, as they will, let's take the ego out of it and remember that we are here to serve and not the other way round. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Moving on to item 6 on the leader's statement, which is the Walleys Quarry update. So far I have no speakers. Mr. Uckfield, you did indicate you were going to speak. Councillor Dick Uckfield.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Right? I mean, after following that, which is really all depressing, right? finally, I've got a bit of good news. The good news, if you read it, right, that the company went to court, right, with the Environmental Agency, and the company lost, and the Environmental Agency won, right? The people in my area, and I'll say the whole of the borough of Newcastle, right, were bewildered because they never thought it for 1 minute, right, that the Environmental Agency would step up. And they have done, right? And there's only one more hurdle to jump, and that's the public inquiry, right? And can I just say, Mr. Chairman, right, while I'm standing on my feet here, before you run me out of time, can I just say, on behalf of the whole of the people that have been involved, can I just say thank you very much to the County Council and every councillor, right, in here, and all the Borough of Newcastle councillors, right, say thank you very much to them for all their support, right, of this long fight that's gone on for a long time. The people in my area have suffered, and they've suffered really bad. And it took a lot of time, right, to people to realise how much suffering they put up with. Hopefully, shortly, with fingers crossed, we're hoping now, right, that everything will be put right, right? You'll always, and I'll say it openly, you'll always have a bit of a smell from a landfill. You'll never stop that, right, no matter what you do, right? And that'll probably happen over a few years before that goes, right? But can I just say, Mr. Chairman, right, I was pleased and honoured to stand up at this council, right, and speak on behalf of this. Very pleased, because the people of Silverdale and the surrounding areas, right, are over the moon that finally, right, people have started listening. The Environmental Agency has seen the light. That's what somebody said to me the other day, you know, and you just can't believe on what's happening, right? And at the end of the day, Mr. Chairman, right, I'd like to say once again, thank you very much for putting up with all my persistence, with all my moaning, with all my groaning, and every time I come in here, it's on the agenda again. Oh, no, he ain't going to start again, is he? Can I just say, Mr. Chairman, and I'll say it openly, right, this is the last time I believe I should be standing up in this council to speak, because I won't be standing again, right? And openly, I shall make it. Thank you.
And Councillor Ruckfield, from the Chair, we will miss you too. Councillor Simon Tegg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's always, I'm going to say, a pleasure. It's always to follow Councillor Ruckfield, but on an issue which we've had many debates in this chamber, and I think we will probably be having more in the future, hopefully more finalised end of issue when the appeal is to the abatement notice is finally heard. And that's what we must focus on now. I think really good news, as reported here in the leader's statement, that the company failed in their attempt to overturn the closure pre the appeal hearing. I think what we need now, what the residents of my division, of Derek's division, and the town as a whole are looking to see is some closure on this, is to get that appeal heard, and hopefully the EA prevailing on that. We feel it could be May at the earliest. I wrote to the Secretary of State, Steve Reid, a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago now, to ask that he could use his powers to bring that forward to get some resolution. I haven't had a response to that yet, but hopefully something can happen that we can do that so we can bring this conclusion. As Derek said, it won't end the odours overnight, but it will lead to full capping of this site and also the restoration phase and also that gas management, finalised gas management of the site, which will reduce the odours. I've been involved in this since this first became a problem in 2010. That's when we first started to see that this site wasn't, well, the ideal place to have a landfill. And it's only since 2016-17 when this new operator's come in that we've had these acute problems that have peaked in 2021 with the odours we know about that have continued. And then, of course, in the run-up to Christmas, post-Christmas, through to even the last couple of days, the amount of odours, the strong gas odours, have been really causing disruptions within the town as well. So we need to see a conclusion of this. Completely agree with Councillor Hookfield. I don't think it will be his last time speaking in the council chamber, though, because if we are debating local government reorganisation in March, you'll be here, and I'm sure you'll have your say. But on this one, it may be the last. And I think thank you to you, Derek, for championing this on behalf of your community. Thank you to the County Council for the work that it's done, standing shoulder to shoulder with the Borough Council for all those years when we've had to press the EA to finally take the action they've taken. And now we're all on the side of the EA. Let's get this appeal thrown out, this closure notice in place, and start to the end of this problem in our borough.
Councillor Alan White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a few words of thanks. First of all, to Mrs. McIver and her team and all the hard work that they've done in public health. But principally, thank you to Councillor Hookfield for the work that you've done as your time as a councillor here over the past many years. You have been a relentless campaigner on this issue, and it should be known by your local residents that you have never, ever let up on it. You and I have had fairly frequent telephone calls about the issue. I've been completely gobsmacked by your level of expertise on the subject, and finding out things like you've had Environment Agency people in your sitting room, sitting down to explain to them exactly what's going on. You can't really underestimate the amount of work that Derek has done on this subject over many years, and I think it's a great tribute to you that hopefully you've achieved a point of success here, Councillor Hookfield. Well done, you. And you're a fine example of what a local campaigner and a local councillor does for their communities, because you've delivered a difference. Well done.
Moving on to item 7 on the leading statements, which is the enterprise. It says the enterprise centres thrive. Councillor Nigel Yates.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and very positive, interesting reading. We have an issue in Leek at this moment in time, and the fact that two of the big banks, both in iconic buildings, have expressed a direction that they're going to close. There's a lot of discussion going on, and hopefully that decision will be reversed, certainly with one of them, but we usually know the direction of travel. Two very large buildings right in Derby Street, which is right in the town centre, so not only will it be a big loss to actually have a physical bank, it'll be a big loss of open space in two iconic buildings. And I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity, perhaps with local government reorganisation, the timeline isn't quite right, but if there's an opportunity to perhaps consider some kind of venture with one or both of those buildings to have a multi-use enterprise zone for businesses. A lot of businesses are basically commerce-based and internet-based, and that space is lacking in the Leek area. And I also make another comment about Biddulph. Firstly, I was very pleased that a number of people mentioned Biddulph. My work appears to be done, so that's very good. But we are absolutely struggling with space for business unit. We just have not got the land available. It's a legacy of, I'm afraid, the previous Conservative administration, which, as the councillors know, jobbed off the remaining sites at Victoria Business Park for a peppercorn and are now used for parking redundant wagons. But I'm interested in Chatley Valley and how the development's coming on there, because Biddulph is dependent upon the strength of business developments and business units in both Stoke-on-Trent and Newcastle-under-Lyme. And we see that as a potential employment area for the residents of Biddulph to actually gain valuable jobs. Thank you.
Councillor Mike Sutherland.
What I would like to do is start to thank the Cabinet Member and Deputy Leader for bringing this report. I especially like paragraph 3, and I quote, "Our enterprise centres are at the heart of Staffordshire's commitment to supporting small business." And for me, that's exactly what it does. We're fortunate to have one of these centres within Cannock Chase. It's a dynamic community of small businesses nestled in what was the historic number 5 West Cannock Colliery site on the edge of Cannock Chase. It's a beautiful area. This enterprise centre offers office space, workshops and industrial units. The centre is made up of 2 office blocks with 60 unfurnished units, ranging from 160 square foot to 900 square foot. There's also an additional 26 industrial units ranging from 600 square foot to 1,500 square foot. And these are let on a slightly longer lease of about 5 years. This is an excellent facility that allows small to medium-sized businesses from startups to grow and establish, and many of them become sustainable business. Now, it is thanks to this county council for the recent support, because it's enabled this enterprise centre to modernise and build it up, and it's the result that we've got is a thriving development that delivers jobs and small businesses. I hope this Labour government take note of the importance or the important role that these enterprise centres have, and don't tax these small, medium-sized businesses out of business. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Philip White.
Thank you very much, Chairman. So I think colleagues have done a really good job of celebrating the work of our enterprise centres, so I'll just endorse what they've said. They are a wonderful asset, which we provide where the market is not providing that enterprise space. So it's classic local government. We will do that where there's a need that the market isn't providing to support those growth businesses. And we'll continue to do that. Regarding the moorlands, we've got a great track record of working together with the District Council in the moorlands across Labour and Conservative administrations. I've got my next meeting of the Moorlands Growth Board next Wednesday up at Moorlands House. On the topic of Moorlands House, I do agree with you that there is a need for further enterprise space in the moorlands. It's something that we've been working with the District Council on for a little while. And I have to say, Moorlands House itself, the headquarters of the council in Leek, would seem to me like a natural candidate for that. There is, we could open a roller disco in there or something and use a bit of the space. It's enormous. And because of changing working patterns, not filled with council officers, bang in the centre of Leek, ample parking, etc., etc. I don't think we need to look outside of that personally. But we remain committed to doing this work around the county, supporting the centres we have, but also growing new ones where there is demand. And we will continue to deliver on that in spite of local government reorganisation, etc. Regarding Chatterley Valley, and I pick up item 1 from the leaders' update today. There is an update on there at bullet point 5. So the earthworks are complete on the site, and construction of the first building on the site is due to start in April. So that is progressing well, and is much needed much needed employment space in the north of the county. So really good to see that, and hopefully that update will suffice.
Moving on to item 8 on the leader's statement, which is Walton Hall Academy. I have no speakers apart from the Cabinet member, so I'm going to take the Cabinet member, Councillor Jonathan Price.
Thank you, Chairman, and good afternoon, everyone. So I'm really pleased to see the leader has included the development of Walton Hall Academy Special School on the statement. This goes to show, and when we talk about devolution today, and local government reorganisation, how local government works and how we are able to facilitate and do that work on a local level, understanding our pupils, particularly our special needs pupils. The ethos of this council, of course, is to try and make sure that as many of our children, regardless of their vulnerability or disability, are educated within a mainstream setting. But of course, that isn't always possible. And when it isn't possible, we need special school places. And as we've talked about earlier around the high needs block, there is a substantial increase in children requiring educational healthcare plans, and particularly in those special school places. So this is just one of a number of projects that opened at the beginning of September 2024. Working with our special schools, we've developed additional classrooms at Fountains High School. an additional base at Rockland Special School, which I had the pleasure of opening last year. And we're also working with Merrifield School to provide a new modular build, which opened in November. And we have other projects as well in the pipeline. There are numerous primary schools as well locally that we have helped to expand, but of course when you expand in a primary special school you need to look on the knock-on effect that you have from that. So it's about making sure you then have enough spaces within our secondary SEND special school provision. And I'm really delighted as well to say that we will be using Staffordshire Place 2 as a post-16 former education college for children from Walton Hall and from other areas as well. Not only will it allow them to be integrated within our local community, but it will give them that opportunity to not only free up space within Walton Hall Academy and other secondary schools, but it will also enable them to have greater independence. And that's something we want to do. We're all keen to make sure that these pupils have those skills for life, that we help and support and set them up to make sure that they can succeed when they leave our education system. So I'm very proud of the work we do with our SEND school places. There is obviously much more we need to do, and demand, of course, is forever putting us under pressure. But and I wanted to take the opportunity to thank our special schools with the work that they've done, and our officers as well. Have worked really hard on our capital schools programme to support this. So thank you.
Thank you. Item 9 on the leading statement, which is Pothole investment continues. Councillor Philip Atkins.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like the leader to add his thanks to the crews, to also the farmers who managed to take out the trees and clear the snow. And I no doubt going to have to do their bit about drainage and ditches, despite their persecution by the present government.
Councillor Mark DeVille.
I'll be very, very brief, Chairman. Thanks for those comments, Councillor Atkins. Our programme to fix more roads is, of course, of paramount importance. I'm extremely disappointed to see that some of our Staffordshire Labour MPs are less enthusiastic about us repairing our roads. And rather than herald the improvements, massive improvements long awaited in their area, they choose to hone in on the disruption to motorists, which we take very, very seriously and that we actively aim to reduce to an absolute minimum. So disruption is important to us. It's important that we keep that to a minimum, but I think most of the tax-paying residents in the MP's area would rather have their potholes repaired than her concentrate on some delays on roads in the area. That's disappointing, Chairman. But what isn't disappointing is the progress that we've made with our Staffordshire roads. Colleagues, we have an excellent team in highways, a strong team, and we constantly challenge each other because that's what good teams do. Good teams do challenge each other. We want the very, very best. We've got more to do. I want to just very briefly take the opportunity of thanking Councillor Clements and her scrutiny panel for the excellent work they do in constantly challenging us in what we do and scrutinising us. Because the very, very best way of improvement of a service is to thoroughly scrutinise it. So the work that you and your panel do, Councillor Clements, is very, very much appreciated and is also extremely positive and extremely useful. So I'm delighted, absolutely delighted with the achievements and with the work that we've done, and that sense of urgency and that sense of customer focus, which I often mention. No complacency, though, of course. We've made good progress, but there's still very, very much to do.
Councillor Alan White.
Briefly, in the work that we do as councils, we look for support from MPs. And it's rather disappointing to have Sarah Edwards, the MP for Tamworth, who's been campaigning for road repairs, to stand up in Parliament this morning and say that Tamworth town centre is being obliterated by roadworks, What she actually means to say is Staffordshire County Council is repairing the roads, which is what we all want. I think she probably misspoke. The same to the previous agenda item about SEND criteria and the work we do there. We've got new MPs in Parliament now, and if they think that it's not working right, then legislate. It's what you're supposed to be doing, rather than commentating on day-to-day activities of local authorities, which you could help out with if you actually use the powers available to you. It is really, really disappointing to see that the MPs in Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent, many of the new ones, don't really understand what's going on in this place. To read in Hansard last week that a Member of Parliament in Stoke says that there's no possibility of people cooperating in Staffordshire because all the leaders hate each other in Staffordshire, so they're never going to come up with a solution. Well, you've got no idea what you're talking about. Get on the page, understand what's going on in your local area, and represent us properly in Parliament. That way we can get the money we need, and that way you can come up with the legislation that's going to make life easier for us as local government, not harder.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Royce. Members, I am aware of the time, but we're so close to the end. We're gonna plough on and not have an afternoon session. That's my decision. Moving on to item 10 on the leader statement, which is the Dignity in Care Awards. Councillor Gillian Pardesi.
Those in care roles, Chair, we know provide assistance with everyday tasks and health needs in order to maintain the dignity and the independence of those for whom they care. They reduce the need for hospital admissions and minimise loneliness. What people in caring roles, Chair, also do is ensure that those they care for feel valued. Many congratulations to all those who've been recognised and receiving Dignity in Care Awards. Awards, Chair, have their place. I recognise that awards have their place and importance. However, we need to make sure that the ones doing the caring are also valued. And part of that also is to make sure that those paid and unpaid in caring roles are rewarded financially to truly reflect and acknowledge how much we value what they do for us all. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Jeremy Pirt.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like just to reflect on the recent CQC visit to Staffordshire County Council. Members will be aware that a couple of years ago the inspection or the assessment of CQC was extended to county councils. And I'd just like to pay tribute to all of the work that the team within health and care, within the partners of our social care partners, and everyone who was involved in that assessment have put into being assessed. It's always a nerve-wracking experience from those people who have been through those assessments, whether it's from an Ofsted point of view or a CQC point of view. And I would just like to thank and pay tribute to the work that all members of staff and partners have done. We won't find out, unfortunately, what the performance, how we will be graded until probably May or June, and obviously I'll share that with members at the earliest opportunity. I didn't think I'd be rising to agree with the first paragraph of what Mrs. Pardesi had to say. I don't often associate myself with her thoughts or comments, but I would associate myself with those comments to pay tribute to the hard work of staff. And the whole point of this paragraph was about the Dignity in Care Awards. There are 11,000 people that the County Council provides services for within the county. It's a huge undertaking, and we never take the opportunity to thank each and every one of them. And I would have preferred to have had a paragraph that just focused on thanking people for the time and effort and work that they put in. We referred to the level of unpaid carers. There are 82,000 unpaid carers within Staffordshire, of which about 1,600 of them are young unpaid carers. It's a huge endeavour within the economy, about £2.6 billion within the economy. And I would just like to encourage every member to share the opportunity to nominate people for the Dignity and Care Awards. This is our way of persuading others as well to nominate those people who put their time and effort in on a daily basis, whether that's paid or unpaid, and to celebrate their professionalism and the dignity that they offer those people that they care for. This year we're also adding in a long service award for those people who have been working within the care sector for the last 20 years. And I would just encourage members to focus in on making sure that we give that personal thanks for the personal work that they do.
Thank you, Councillor Spirt. Item 11 on the leader statements, which is Staffordshire Libraries. Councillor Asphal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to express my appreciation to the County Council for the remarkable transformation of the Burton Library, which sits in my division, following its recent refurbishment. The investment of £1.3 million is essential for the community resource and has undoubtedly enhanced the library's role as a hub for learning, engagement and support within our local area. The feedback I've received from residents and users and members of the public regarding the new facilities and services at the library has been overwhelmingly positive. The modernisation of the library has not only revitalised the physical space but also expanded its offerings to better meet the diverse needs of our community. Thank you.
Councillor Philip White.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to add my thanks to Councillor Wilson and the fantastic libraries team for the refurbishment of Burton Library, which is my family library. I'm the same age as the library, actually. In 1977 it opened. That's when I arrived as well. And now it's even better. I'm able to take my little boy there, and he's been ever so excited waiting for the children's library to open because he loves books. We were amongst the first people in when it quietly reopened just before Christmas. And it's an amazing space, and an absolute credit to the energy and commitment that this council puts into its libraries, 43 libraries, and this investment, this rolling investment in refurbishing and renewing these libraries and building new ones where they're needed. It's wonderful to see, and in contrast to other places, such as Birmingham City Council at the moment, where they've announced closures of more of their libraries. We're investing in them here. It's brilliant. Huge thank you, Councillor Wilson, to you and your team, particularly for the investment in Burton now. But I know that is part of a longer story of many more of these, and more to come in future years, I hope, as well. So thank you.
Councillor Victoria Wilson.
Thank you, Chairman. So at a time when local authorities all over the country are closing their libraries left, right and centre, and I just did a bit of research, I think since 2016 we've lost about 180 libraries in this country at the least. Staffordshire County Council's jewel in the crown, which is our library service, isn't just staying open and adding things like out-of-hours public access so that people can go to the library in their own time. We're actually actively reinvesting in our library service. Our teams have now refurbished Burton, Tamworth, Codsall, Lichfield and Newcastle in recent years. And next, I'm very pleased to say, is Wombourne and the Nicholson Institute in Leek. We've done this with the engagement of local people, local members, as Mr. Arshad has mentioned, and to the residents as well, so that we know that what we're putting together is something that local people actually want. And there are more library works in the pipeline as well. Our mobile library is also really thriving. It's going very strong. I'd like to offer at this point my thanks to our teams, our staff, and of course to our volunteers who are truly fantastic and keep our library service moving in a really positive and vibrant way around the county. Yes, we have 43 libraries. That's 43 front doors into this county council. How many local authorities have that? They're all welcoming, they're all helpful. They provide a really excellent service. They provide brilliant advice and guidance. And in the face of things like other local authorities who are struggling to keep themselves in the black, we're providing a really fantastic offer for our residents. And under this administration, I'm really confident that the services we offer, which are well planned and well managed, are the best for the people of Staffordshire. And long may this last. And if I can just add that Mr. White is the same age as Burton Library. If he'd like us to arrange a refurb for him, that can be organised.
He's overdue. He's overdue. We should
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. I'm just going to add something to that, as chairman, I've done quite a tour of the libraries and genuinely thoroughly enjoyed it. One of the most challenging afternoons I had was with 1 hour of a knit and natter group in Burton Library. That wasn't unchallenging. I come to the last item on today's leadership report, and it's community spirit raised. I'm going to do this slightly differently. It is about a community working together. I'm only taking a single speaker, Councillor Mark DeVille.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I think this item is beautifully summarised, Chairman, in the first paragraph, that community spirit is at the heart of everything that is so fantastic about Staffordshire. That says it all. We live in a wonderful place, and the fact that we live in a wonderful place is not made by beautiful buildings, infrastructure. The beautiful place is made by the people who live in the county. And never, Chairman, has that community spirit been more apparent than on the 16th and 17th of January, in the depths of this winter, in one of the remotest parts of Staffordshire Moorlands, in Huntley and in Topmanslow. And Chairman, the good people of Tean and Cheadle and Draycott and surrounding areas absolutely gave the most amazing demonstration of public spirit when they all came together and they all put other people before themselves. I'm so massively proud of our local community because basically, Chairman, in difficult times, and it's great to know that in difficult times, we look after each other and we look out for each other. The 16th and 17th of January, Chairman, were an extremely emotional couple of days. And all of my member colleagues in the council chamber today, I know will join me in sincerely thanking the people of Cheadle, Tean, Draycott and surrounding area in our local community, and also join me in sending our very fond and best wishes to the family that were involved. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor DeVille. That is the end of the leading statement. So I move that the report be received. Is that agreed? Thank you. Item 7, questions on the standing order. Members, the 4 questions and answers that have been circulated to members and published on our website, in accordance with the usual procedure, the questions and answers will be taken as read. I will allow each question 5 minutes in which to ask a supplementary question and to receive an answer. I will remind members that no debate is allowed. Councillor Yates to Councillor DeVille. Councillor Yates to have a supplementary.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I certainly do, yes. Very interesting reading the answers to this. I think it sort of reflects the areas we suffer greatest in with the freezing conditions. And I think when you look at the received, it's really a cry for help in some respects. Because just put this into context, and there will be a very brief question, is that during the last month, we did have a spell of 9 days of ice. We had a snowfall, slight melt, it turned to ice. We had a lot of our community in Biddulph, it didn't really affect Leek, surprisingly, in Biddulph, who were trapped in their homes. We had some over 55s bungalows, and I was getting calls. People could not get out. They couldn't use the pavements. They couldn't use the road. Washington Close particularly affected, which is a slight hill, and it's not on a gritting route. And I was inundated with requests for gritting bins, and inundated equally with requests for gritting bin refills, which the county stepped up and did. I'm just wondering, and this is the question now, you know, because I know it's difficult. We might have... I'm squeezed between two Atkins. It's terrible. This is the question, because it is difficult. We might have no more frost this year. We might have a very mild winter next year. I don't personally like grit bins. They tend to be misused. They tend to be reversed in by wagons. They tend to be de facto litter bins in the summer, so they do come with problems. I'm wondering, with the position we've got grit bins, I'm not expecting to go, but where we get effectively cries for help, instead of going through a very slow procedure of grit bins and going through an ad hoc thing of leaving a bit of a dump of salt somewhere which may or may not disappear, get washed away or worse, could we, when times are bad, use bulk bags of salt, the same as we have deliveries bulk bags of hardcore bulk bags of sand, which can be dropped off in strategic points in direct response to the kind of issues which we had for those 9 days over winter. So it may or may not happen. It just is another one of those things where it could be a direct contingency response to resolve what is an actual serious problem in all places apart from South Staffs, by looks of things.
Councillor Mark DeVille.
Thank you, Mr Yates. Take the opportunity of really thanking our highways officers who are out in all weathers, keeping our roads safe, keeping our communities safe. They do a tremendous job. And you're right, Councillor Yates, I did approve the refilling of grit bins. I think that's important. And I think it's also important that we recognise what we call our hill farmers, who are strategically placed right up in the north of the county, who get out there, apart from doing their own jobs on the farm, they get out there and use their snow ploughs in a fantastic way whenever it's necessary. You know, we've had 4 named storms already this winter, so the response, I think, has been absolutely tremendous. There's also a great response from local communities with regard to the grit bins, and I do take your point about the use of grit bins, and I think misuse of grit bins is a very, very, very small percentage. The massive percentage is that grit bins provide the community with the opportunity to help themselves, and they really do help themselves, and I'm proud of the work that they do. With regard to the bulk bags of grit and salt, that's something that we can certainly consider and discuss with our officers. I know that Mr Atkinson is making notes of that. Thank you, Mr Yates.
Question to Councillor Pardesi to Councillor DeVille. Do you have a supplementary question, Councillor Pardesi?
Yeah, yes, I do,
you.
Chair. My question is, why don't we prune our trees due to natural or seasonal issues? Trees and branches on many of our trees are growing so big that piles of slippery, messy leaves are accumulating on our pavements, roads and our drains, and we're having to ask our local councils to clean them up. It's also, as well, totally unacceptable and, quite frankly, embarrassing when residents will say, the tree in front of my house is so overgrown, I lose hours of summer sun and daylight because it becomes dark earlier in my home, and I shouldn't have to say, well, that's tough because our tree policy says you're not automatically entitled to light. No, it's like we hate our residents.
Thank you, Councillor Pardesi. Councillor DeVille.
It's a ridiculous final statement, Chairman. You know, absolutely ridiculous. We hate our residents. I would ask you to please revoke that statement, because you know, Councillor Pardesi, that nothing is further from the truth. Now, if you're embarrassed to represent your local residents, then so be it on you. I certainly aren't embarrassed to represent my local residents. And do we manage our mass of trees in the county? Councillor Pardesi, of course we do. I shouldn't have to tell you this. We've got 1.5 million trees that we manage. It's massive. Of those 1.5 million, 600,000 of them are managed and maintained on the side of our highways. Mr. Chairman, I find it difficult to answer that follow-up question because it is just so ridiculous. And I think when you use the word hate, I think that's probably part of the Labour government who hate farmers, pensioners, small businessmen and large businessmen. So the word hate, I think, is inappropriate, but I think it's almost gathering momentum within the Labour Party.
Moving on to question 3, Councillor Asfar to Councillor Tegg.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try and be a bit softer. So, thank you to the Cabinet Member for the detailed overview, and the supplementary will be in relation to the Severn Trent Water Maintenance Plan to remove the debris and vegetation from the channel. Would you be able to provide any specific timeframes for these works to be completed? Thank you.
Councillor Tegg.
Mr. Chairman, my name's on the question. I've spoken with Councillor Tagg about this, and we'll certainly get back to you, Councillor Afsar.
And the final question, Councillor Charlotte Atkins to Councillor DeVille. Councillor Atkins, do you have a supplementary?
I do, thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chairman.
you.
Thank you for that answer. But if buses are not accessible, any amount of adaptation to the bus stops won't help a wheelchair user get onto a bus. That is the problem. And the other problem we have is that because we don't have compliant vehicles, it means that we can't run the vacant seat scheme for school transport. That means that you'll have parents literally driving behind the school bus to take their kids to school. And I know this is something which Councillor Heath has been talking about for many years. And the question is, if Warwickshire, Worcestershire, Kent, East Sussex, North Yorkshire, to name just a few, can run a school vacant seat scheme, why can't Staffordshire? So when will the Staffordshire bus fleet be compliant with these public vehicle regulations?
Councillor Mark DeVille.
Councillor Atkins, we've discussed home-to-school transport in great depth, and I agree with much of what you said. These discussions will be, of course, ongoing, but they'll be part of the big picture plans that we have for Staffordshire. And I'm really excited about our local transport plan. We'll be working intensely on the future plan. It's not a talking document, it's a doing document, and it will clearly focus on customer important factors, such as the one you said, but also on timetables and schedules, on reliability of service, and accessibility to our bus services. So the big picture of this is that, yes, it's massively important to us, and yes, it will be addressed right across this council in the local transport plan.
Thank you. Moving on to item 8 on today's agenda, which is petitions. I'll be notified of no petitions, but I will just sort of put it out there in case there is one. No, there isn't. Brilliant. Moving on to item 9, which is exclusions to the public. There are no exclusions for the public. So, members, thank you for this morning. Please have a very pleasant afternoon. That's the end of the meeting. Thank you.